Gray. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Thank you to Ian Collins. Back tomorrow between 1 and 4, of course, with the afternoon show. It's Drive, though. Talk live across the UK, the home of free speech and common sense. And obviously, so much in the news. Some very serious stuff, of course, over the weekend. Tensions in the Middle East. It would be fair to say reaching a crucial point. We all know now that Trump has made those targeted bombing attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. Unprecedented escalation. Now, Washington is saying, do it again. If you don't come to the negotiating table, we'll be back. The Ayatollahs are saying this is absolutely outrageous. Everybody's continuing to wonder what's going to happen next. And this isn't just about two countries trading blows, is it? Iran controls one of the world's most vital oil routes. And if they retaliate, what does that mean for the rest of us? Israel's economy has already taken a direct hit for his involvement. I'd love to know what you think of this. We've got Sean Bell, military analyst, the best as well, former fighter pilot, to explain and take us through. I think everybody naturally looks over their shoulder and thinks, what the hell is going on? Was Donald Trump right to do what he did? Should the Western powers have stood up and taken notice, or should they sit on the fence like Starmer going, we need to go back to the negotiating table? Let's not forget what I said before, and this is a fact, and there will be people who think this is an outrageous comment. The mad mullahs of Iran have been financing any terrorist group you can imagine in the Middle East to undermine almost anybody and everybody, democracies and beyond, for years and years. They're the ones behind Hamas. They're the ones behind Hezbollah. They're the ones behind the Houthis. They're the ones that have caused so much pain. Do you want to leave? Question, what do you make of it? Do you want to leave people like that in charge of a nuclear ability that they can launch at any time, or is it right and proper that somebody did something about it and Donald Trump stood up to the plate? Love to know what you think, as ever, if you want to be on the show. 0344 499 1000. Bit of a change this week. Ryan is not here. Jodie is the queen. The undisputed queen of drive time. She's got... What's the name of the girl that's answering the phones? I can't remember. I'm joking. Her psychic faith is here. You can reach her. 0344 499 1000. You can send a voice note via WhatsApp, same number, 0344 499 1000, or you can send a text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. One of the things that's really got you goat, apart from what's happening in the Middle East, is this Palestinian Action group. Can we get this absolutely straight? Last week, on Friday, they vandalised two planes at RAF Brize Norton to the cost to you and me and the British taxpayer of £35 million. They've been banned from protesting. They've been called a prescribed terrorist group. Thank the Lord. Why is it taking you so goddamn long? And all that stuff, sorry, was going to start really calmly. Quite rightly, the police went on the streets and did what they did with the far-right riots. They should absolutely remove this disgusting organisation off the streets ASAP. 0344 499 1000. And as I said already to Ian, to make yourself feel utterly better, if you're working hard to pay your bills this afternoon, don't worry, because even if you come to this country and you get rejected, you still get to stay in a hotel. People have been told they have no right to stay are living 51,000 appeals and they're still living here, costing us £8 million a day. The world's gone barking mad. But the story, I did say to Ian, I'll repeat it now, even my wife sent this to me this morning. She was like, you're joking. Rochdale grooming gang leader Kari Abdul Roth is still living freely on our streets despite losing his right to stay. He's a convicted paedophile. 55, one of 9 men jailed in 2012 for raping and trafficking vulnerable young white girls. They were told, well, he was told in 2014 he'd be deployed back or deported back to Pakistan. Still here. He's here, a convicted paedophile rapist, and Lucy Connell is in jail. 0344 499 1000. Loads to talk about. Get your call in, whatever it is. The Middle East. It was about Palestine Action. It was about migration. It could be about that revolting rapist in where is he? Rochdale, still walking our streets. We want to hear from you. We'll start, though, this afternoon, as I said. Let's get an angle on what actually is going on in the Middle East. Sean Bell, military analyst. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I'm very well. How are you, sir?
Smart as carrots this afternoon, sir. Is that an office, or are you just had your passport photo taken? What's happening?
I'm on holiday at the moment. So I've literally been dragged from my holiday sunbed to support you this afternoon. It's my pleasure, of course, but yes,
This
you'll
is
excuse
brilliant.
me.
Do you know, if it wasn't such a serious subject, I'd love to. I found I'm going to ask you the question because you're a top man. You've got shorts on underneath that garb, haven't you?
I would show you, but it will go viral. But yes, I do.
I love that. When it's absolutely, I had to say it. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. Genuinely, we've all watched, we've all read, we've all seen. I'd like your take first. We've talked a lot on this station about the threat that Iran poses. Everybody's known about this nuclear ability that they had. There was 3 particular areas that were struck. This started with Israel. What's your take on Donald Trump involving the United States? Because I read something at the weekend, and there are people for and there are people against. It's not just now, it's what happens afterwards, right?
It is. I mean, as a military guy, you'd expect me to say that as a world superpower, you know, there is an element of admiration of just how America can go about this sort of strike. It had B-2 bombers, $1 billion a time, taking off from continental US on 38-hour round trips, supported by all sorts of refueling tankers, the like, meeting up with fighters on the way, a strike package going in, over 125 aircraft, 75, I think, precision-guided munitions, even a submarine launching Tomahawk missiles, everything timed to within seconds of each other to have the element of surprise, all of which it seems to take to deliver 14 of the biggest bombs you and I have ever seen, these GBU-57s, 30,000 pounds. Put it into context, I used to fly military jets, even fully laden with fuel and a couple of £1,000-pounders. My jet would still not weigh 30,000 pounds. As a result of that, I could never have carried one of those. The only aircraft that can carry them is the B-2 Spirit bomber. And we've now heard that 7 of those bombers were carrying 2 of those bombs each. And again, in context, America's only got 19 of those B-2 Spirit bombers. That was a significant proportion of the fleet. And those 2 crews, 38-hour trips, it was several hours later before they finally put the aircraft back on the ground. You'd have to admire that as a military superpower.
What everybody's talking about is what happens now. Trump will say, I did it, I want the world to be a safer place. Ian was asking, is the world a safer place because of Donald Trump? Other people will say, oh, he shouldn't interfere. I made the point. I'd like you, to say what you think, I guess. The mad mullahs of Iran have been financing terrorist groups for years and years, and this has obviously come to a head. But it's what happens next. Trump's saying if you even consider revenge, worse will happen. The Ayatollahs, I presume, naturally feel that they should do something. What should we all be thinking at this point, Sean?
Well, I think we have to go back to basics. I mean, part of this, Israel deliberately took this step because it said that the nuclear capability of Iran was getting close to the point they'd have a nuclear bomb. Under the non-proliferation agreement, I know it's very boring, but it was signed many years ago. Iran is a signatory, but they have been developing special uranium enrichment way, way beyond the level you need for nuclear power. And the only reason for doing that is because you want to get a nuclear weapon. And they've gradually been restricting those independent observers that go in. As a result, whether it's right or wrong, Israel finally decided, they're eventually going to get the weapon. We've got to stop them. One of the challenges, though, is these subterranean capabilities. Iran knows full well that people are going to come after this military capability, so they buried it deep underground, the Fordow facility, 80 meters down. Israel doesn't have a weapon that can take that out. America does. And I think once Israel embarked on this, America had to make the choice. Either you get involved with a one-off strike, which it seems they've done, and then they've sat back. My big question, though, Jeremy, is when I used to deliver bombs, it's one thing to look down over the side of the cockpit and see if it's hit the target. How do you know if that bomb has actually got 80 meters underground and taken out the facility? I know President Trump says he's obliterated. What happens if it hasn't? What happens if that still survives? What is America going to do now? They've taken all the risk by stepping over the start line, but if they hadn't actually destroyed it, what has it achieved?
I mean, that's the point I read about that 80 feet, you're absolutely right, and all encased in rock. And I guess that the argument is, should Western powers be holding Iran's feet to the fire, or should indeed, is this seen as a reckless trip towards war? And I get the people that say the other, but I do think it's important to point out that let's be honest, that they have been building, as you said, a powerful ability to wreak havoc across the world. Any information, though? You said, you know, you don't... Is there any information? We've seen pictures. It seemed to be quite precise from what I saw over the last couple of days. But in terms of... We don't know how far and how deep they've managed to be.
No, and the trouble about battle damage assessment, I mean, if you go all the way back to the Gulf War when we were targeting hardened aircraft shelters with fighter jets in, you can see a hole in the top of the hardened aircraft shelter. But you don't know whether there was an aircraft in it. You don't know whether it's been blown up. And likewise, these bombs are undoubtedly, these GBO-57s, these massive ordnance penetrators, undoubtedly go down a long way. But the testing, they've never been used in action before. Going through earth is one thing. Going through rock is another. Going through granite is something else. And concrete. They've got to go a long way through, and I think you'd only have to study many, many days to see, not only by watching, but listening to comms, looking at cooling towers and vents to see if they were still active. And for President Trump to immediately declare that they've been obliterated, I suspect is a little bit early in the day to be making that sort of judgment.
That doesn't surprise you that he said that. Do you fear revenge from Iran, or do you think this will have an impact on their leadership? I mean, the fact is, people have been saying all weekend, oh, is he calling for a change of leadership? That's happened in numerous countries that have come under attack, and the aftermath is not decent for the entire world. But there's no doubt these are evil men. We're all hoping that one strike is enough to what? Enforce change as a regime vis-a-vis Syria, or just get them to step back from that nuclear capability?
I think that it's been really clear, actually, Jezza. I mean, OK, I accept that Benjamin Netanyahu's been hinting at regime change, but the harsh reality is air power alone will not force regime change. You have to remember that Iran has got nearly 1 million soldiers under arms, about 2/3 of a million regulars and about 1/3 of a million reservists. They haven't been touched in this. They are as much to defend the Ayatollah as they are to protect the nation from the nation's enemies. So the Ayatollah's #1 priority is to stay in power. And it's very little that's changed to stop him doing that. And generally speaking, wars in the Middle East, we may see it one way, but actually it does galvanise a nation. You remember Saddam Hussein used to pick wars with his neighbours. That's why he's probably safer not going to see a regime change as a result of this.
Going to keep an eye on this for everybody. If you want to talk about it, 0344 499 1000. Couple of other things, if I can, Sean, quickly. When Trump was inaugurated for the second time and he started bashing NATO, a lot of people, I don't know if you're included, thought this was outrageous. But you have to say, on the day that the UK and NATO allies finally agreed to boost spending on defence and related areas to 5% of GDP, because the Americans under Trump basically said, listen, I'm not going to do it if you don't pay the same. In pure layman's terms, he was right about that, wasn't he? We should have been spending more on defence. It was an easy cut for years and years under successive governments. The world has changed. It's not a Cold War. It's a frightening world right now. We should be spending, however difficult, more on defence, shouldn't we?
There's no doubt we should be spending more on defence. I'm somewhat cynical about when it becomes a political process here, because the announcement that's going to be made probably is 3.5% and 5%, but by the middle of next decade, by which time President Donald Trump will long have been gone. He's only a one-term president, and everybody can start thinking afresh. So I'm less convinced that this is going to be hard numbers, but you're absolutely right. We've been enjoying a peace dividend for too long. If you only look at what's happening in Iran, they don't have air power. They are now being attacked from the air by day and by night. We don't have any missile defences in this country. We would be completely vulnerable if we were in that sort of fight. We weren't always the case, but we've been saving money. OK, the threat didn't demand it. It does today. And somehow we've got to find the money to protect our nation. After all, that is the #1 priority of any government.
And that's the point, isn't it? And I think you're right. I think Conservatives completely at the centre of this. It's not about political parties. It's been an easy cut, isn't it, the military? But the world has changed. And just one final thing, and then I'll let you get back to your sunbed. Whip off the jacket, whip off the shirt, get the legs back out. Oh, they are out anyway. Palestine Action. I'm not asking you politically here, but Palestine Action vandalised this group. 2 planes, you're a military man, RAF Bryce Norton last Friday. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has now decided to prescribe Palestine Action under the Terrorism Act. Your thoughts on this story?
Well, first of all, I completely disagree with your use of the word vandalism. Vandalism is going up to a statue of Churchill, daubing red paint on it, and it's inconvenient, but you can get it clear. What these people did, went to two of our frontline aeroplanes, sprayed paint into the engine. That basically means the engines have to come out, they have to be reserviced and the like. We only have 14 of these aircraft. They're used regularly to help our fighters on quick reaction alert in north and south of England, protecting our island nation. They help us protect the Falkland Islands, and they're on the eastern flank of NATO, helping tank our fighters over there. As soon as you lose two of those, you make a massive hole in our national defensive capability. That's not vandalism. There's a National Security Act that deals with this. It's called sabotage, and the full force of the law should be brought to bear with anybody like that. On the other side, though, Jez, I would also say, thank goodness this was exposed by just a couple of people on a little electric scooter bike. Thank goodness it wasn't exposed by Russians who might have meant us even more harm.
Completely agree. Listen, really good of you to take time out from yet another holiday. Honest to God, the man's always on holiday. Don't raise a leg. Have a great afternoon. Sean Bell joining us live and exclusive on Talk Drive, explaining what's going on in the Middle East. And if you want to talk about that, 0344 499 1000, Palestine Action. That's really interesting what he said. The group was behind the vandalisation... No. The sabotage of two planes, part of our forces at RAF Brize Norton last Friday. Yvette Cooper has now decided to make them prescribe them as, well, they're not allowed to exist. Today there's a march. Again, sort of soft hands by the police, and you say to Yvette Cooper, and actually Home Secretaries before her, why the hell hasn't this group been prescribed as a terrorist organisation before? Oh, because we're getting into the whole debate about Gaza. No, Palestine Action, right, put the defence of this country, right, at risk. What do you make of that? 0344 499 1000, Talk Drive.
Keir Starmer was actively undermining that strategy, because Keir Starmer was wandering around saying, "Oh, you don't need to worry. Donald Trump doesn't mean it. It's just noise. It's just the hawks in Washington just beating the drum. It's not really going to happen." So at the same time that Keir Starmer was basically calling for de-escalation, his words had the practical effect of undermining that strategy. And you can't have the British Prime Minister conducting foreign policy in complete ignorance.
You can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I haven't got time. Tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people, then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about this.
And actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
421 nearly. 0344 499 1000. Anything you want to talk about? You might want to talk about, is it all-out war in the Middle East? Did Trump do the right thing? Are you pro the attack, or are you worried about it? What do you make of Palestine Action, a proscribed terrorist group at last clashing with the police, but not the same heavy-handed tactics that they took to the people that took to the streets after those dreadful riots up north after all the problems took place. Migration. You can be told to leave the country and still be living here. But you know what? Straight away, the one thing that's got you, this appalling story. Rochdale grooming gang ringleader Qari Abdul Rauf is still living freely on our streets despite losing his right to stay and having his citizenship stripped. He should have been deported back to Pakistan in 2014. This man, 55, was one of 9 men jailed in 2012, so only for 2 years then or something like that, for raping young white girls. He's still walking the streets. Chris, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Hey, bud.
Hello, mate.
Listen, a couple of things to say about this Rochdale guys. I think there's 2 of them, actually, that this applies to. What they did, they lost their appeals, so they destroyed their Pakistani passports and rescinded their Pakistani citizenship, right? That's why he's still here, because we've already got the deport order. So if Yvette Cooper, a backbone, right, and she wants to protect our young girls, they should scoop them up, put them on a plane with security, fly them out to Pakistan, halfway across. They phone the Pakistan government and say, these 2 are coming home. When Pakistan says, as they said, well, we can't take them, they ain't got citizenship anymore, we say, OK, that's fine. When they land, as soon as they land, if you don't take them back, all visas from your country, for work visas to the UK, holiday visas, whatever it is, stops. And 24 hours after that, your aid package stops too. I tell you what, mate, they would take them back in a heartbeat.
Does make a mockery, doesn't it? I mean, again, I always have to sort of talk to him about him because he seems to do the things that he says he'd do. Trump. This isn't about the Middle East. He's deported what he sees as illegal migrants instantly, and the response has been phenomenal. Not popular, of course, in Democrat LA, but actually across America, huge support for saying illegal migrants. I saw something on, I don't know what it is, TikTok or something. Margaret Thatcher. I don't know if you'd seen this. Have you seen this from 1983? She basically said, if the world comes, if we get to a point where illegal migrants cannot be returned to the country of their origin because of bureaucratic red tape and posturing by left-wing lawyers, we are talking about international chaos. That was 40 years ago, and the woman could see it. You're dead right. It is about backbone. There is not, it seems, a politician who has the backbone to say, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. It's, again, coining phrase. Let's put Britain first, because Britain's skint. We can't control our borders. We've got all the problems we've got in our country. You are a convicted... Somebody's put here, and I'll take you, Nick says, I hope the people who sabotage the planes get the same treatment as Lucy Connolly. I bet a year's salary they don't. 2-tier justice. Lucy Connolly, we know this, famous now by Chris, that she wrote some hurty words. They weren't. I don't condone that. She should have absolutely been brought to task. But she's languishing in hell for 31 months. Rochdale grooming paedophiles who walk in the streets. Hugh Edwards on a BBC pension. He's a paedophile as well. We don't get our priorities right, do we? He's gone. So he hasn't got. He's there.
Listening to your chat from the RAF just now.
Yeah.
Oh, you still there? Oh, I've lost you. But what a great guy. He taught me something, because I was concerned, like Ian, I was watching Ian earlier, allowing the government to prescribe the Palestinian Action as a terrorist group. Yes, that's what your first thought is. Yes, let's. But it's a sledgehammer for a small nut. And the trouble is, once they've got that through for them, they could use it on other people later on. That's mission creep. But they don't have to, because they could put everybody all the top members, they could put their door in tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock and charge them with joint venture. Well, that's the law that I would use. But I didn't know there was a sabotage law.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
You don't need to be a group. So I learned something new from that chap earlier. Forgot I didn't log his name.
His name was Sean Bell. Listen, you, great as ever to have you on. Got to move on. 4:26 live across the UK. JK on Drive. Let's. How do you say this? Let's page the political oracle, the political editor of the Sun. Jack Elsom. A very good afternoon on a sunny Monday. How are you?
Afternoon, Jeremy. How are you?
In the box, in the tie, looking the part. Shorts on or long trousers?
Oh, long trousers, of course. Shorts are already reserved for beaches and on the Isle of Wight, which I was at this weekend.
I know you were. I saw the pictures. Disgraceful behaviour. I don't want to talk to you about... Well, I just touch upon very quickly Keir Starmer. Somebody said, good afternoon, Jez. How embarrassing for the United Kingdom that our place on the world stage is such that Keir Starmer wasn't informed about the attack until 10 minutes before it happened. The US could so easily have used the Chagos Islands and cut their flying time down in half, but under our agreement with Mauritius, we have to give them notice of any military activity. You can guess which would have happened. They would have been straight on the phone to China and Iran to tell them of the impending attack. Starmer is an international embarrassment. Was he embarrassed, do you think? I mean, he's been sitting on the fence. Oh, Iran needs to come back to the negotiating table.
Well, I would add a little bit of accuracy into what your caller said. I don't think actually we are obliged to give Mauritius any notification before strikes are launched from that airbase. I think we have to inform them after the fact. And also, in regard to Starmer only being told 10 minutes before, I think they probably dispute that. It does seem that they weren't given a load of notice, but I think probably a bit more than 10 minutes. But you're absolutely right. In terms of Britain's position in this, it does seem that there's an awful lot of fence-sitting going on because Trump and Netanyahu and Israel clearly taking a position that Iran's nuclear facilities need to be taken out. I think most right-minded people in this country would agree with that. But when it comes to the UK's position at the moment, all we're getting is a bit of warm words, not amounting to very much, saying that they want Iran to return to the negotiating table. Now, listen, people obviously don't want sort of maybe like a sort of hot war breaking out in the Middle East. No. But sometimes might is right, and sometimes you do need to show action to send a strong message and to wipe out threats to a country as Iran's nuclear facilities pose to Israel. And David Lammy this morning couldn't even say whether he thought that America's bombing of Iran was legal or not. You know, I struggle. Way to treat an ally.
I struggle massively with David Lammy. I don't want to be disrespectful, but if that is the best that we've got as a foreign secretary, then I struggle to even begin to appreciate anything that the man does. But I make this point. It is fence-sitting, and this isn't actually just aimed at the Labour Party. I think the British politics is full of fence-sitters. And actually, yes, he has many millions of critics, Donald Trump. But he makes a decision, he says what he's going to do, and he does it. And for Starmer, I think it's really fascinating. And I shouldn't use this moment to say this, but I'm going to. When you have all the ideological bases that he has swirling around his stupid little mind, I've got to please this and please that, and human rights lawyers and people's rights and blah, 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 blah. These are really, really difficult times for a Labour Prime Minister who would, and has said in the past what he thinks about Donald Trump and, you know, attacking another country, blah, blah, blah. He must be in a very difficult position trying to play the ally on the world stage and placate his backbenchers. Would that be an accurate comment?
Yes, totally. And I think Starmer is in a bit of a bind here. So on the one hand, he's totally spent the past 11 months trying to ingratiate himself with the new White House, with Donald Trump, and almost stick like glue to him on the world stage. But now he's in the awkward position where he believes, or we believe anyway, that his Attorney General, Lord Hermer, has given him legal advice saying that any attack on Iran could be illegal. Now, the human rights lawyer in him immediately recoils and is very, therefore, squeamish about attacks on Iran and intervention.
This is the same one. Can I just say, this is the same Attorney General, Lord Hermer, who said, yes, Lucy Connolly should go to jail for 31 months, yeah?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, precisely.
But also, you are right. Lots of Labour's backbenchers are also incredibly squeamish about any kind of intervention. Many of them still bear the scars of the Iraq War, which I think still haunts the Labour Party to this day. but actually that shouldn't be an impediment to sticking up with our allies against what is a pretty murderous, bloodthirsty regime like Tehran. And Keir Starmer is saying he wants Iran to come to the table. Now, do we really think that the Ayatollah Khamenei is someone that we can do business with? I'm not sure they could.
I thought you weren't supposed to negotiate with terrorists then.
Well, totally. And Mark Sedwell, the former national security advisor, I think had some pretty sage advice this morning where he says, we have seen how this movie ends before. Dictatorships and authoritarian states like Iran will fight to the bitter end to preserve their regime. And any sort of notion that they can now be brought to the negotiating table, I mean, it is a hope, but we should not we should not put all of our eggs in that basket. And if push comes to shove, and they do need pure brute force to be dealt with, like Trump has done, then I think we should support that.
Completely agree. What do you make of it, Peeps? 0344 499 1000. On the streets today in Trafalgar Square, outside Parliament, Palestine Action. Protesters have clashed with police. This is on the back of it. I thought Sean Bell, you wouldn't have been listening. Sean Bell kicked off the show today, and he said, I want to take aim at what you lot have been saying on Talk about the vandalisation of 2 planes at RAF Bryce Norton. He said that was not vandalisation. It was sabotage of 2 military aircraft that are essential to our security, worth millions and millions of pounds, and these people should be incarcerated under sabotage laws. Why has it taken so long for Palestine Action, we're back there with the Labour Party, to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation? That's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think most people would go one step further than sabotage and say it was nothing short of treason. I mean, breaking into a military airbase and essentially sabotaging some of our military assets seems like a treacherous act. And you are totally right that they have now been prescribed. Well, Yvette Cooper, as the Home Secretary, has said that she's going to prescribe them. But we are in a very weird situation today where at the same time the Home Secretary is telling MPs that this group is going to be prescribed as a terror organisation, they are currently out on the streets giving the police the runaround in London. And I think therein lies another angry with that.
Yeah, of course. And therein lies the other Starmer problem again and again, because if you try and be all things to all bloody people, it comes back and bites you. He's cuddling up to Trump on the stage. He's got to come home and face his backbenchers. This is, you know, what happened after the horrible, horrible triple murder up north, right? When all that information came out, which was wrong, I think it could have been stopped by the least. There were some terrible far-right people on the streets, but there were other people who were protesting. Starmer made a point, and I agreed with him at the time. We don't need this on the streets. Suddenly we had police, we had judges, we had space in jails. Why the hell aren't the British police being as strong and as instant to these Palestine Action terrorist group participants, for want of a better stage of a description, than they were when they dealt with those other rights? That's why people get so frustrated, Jack.
Yeah, and people would want to see the police come down on these extremists like a ton of bricks. And whether it leads to arrests or charges, then that's up to the police, obviously. But I think Starmer does have a problem here. I think that he says the right things, and after the Palestine Action sabotage of Bryce Norton, he did come out very quickly and say this is totally wrong and his vandalism is a disgrace. But people don't just want warm words, they want to see action as well, and they want to see action backing up the rhetoric which he says. And I think that is currently where there's a disconnect in Starmer's government, because often he can say the right things and he clearly knows what he needs to do, but then when it comes to follow-ups and actual hard action and results, that's where sometimes it seems to be lacking.
I think a lot of people would say that's very true, but a lot of people would say with him, there's one rule for one and one rule for somebody else. I thought this was interesting today. Migration back naturally as it is every single day. We discovered today that rejected asylum seekers, Jack, right? They're still living in hotels. 51,000 appeals are still pending, which means that people who potentially shouldn't be in this country and have even been told they shouldn't be in this country, are waiting for the final stamp or whatever, waiting to be deported, are still in those bloody hotels. And I thought it was really interesting that Labour voters, did you see that poll, think that the biggest burden on the NHS, Labour voters think the biggest burden on the NHS is, yes, illegal migration. He's getting it on all fronts, and quite rightly, isn't he?
Yes, and the migration issue is interesting, especially when it comes to asylum claims in hotels. Your viewers might remember mere 2 weeks ago, Rachel Reeves stood up in the spending review in the House of Commons and said that Labour is going to get people out of hotels by the end of the next this Parliament, 2029, and it will save £1 billion. But the devil is in the detail. How is that going to happen? Because currently, migrant hotels are up on Labour's watch than they were under the Tories. I think there's about 38,000 migrants in hotels currently. And the real problem is that until they get to grips with international law and human rights laws in this country, that number is only going to go up. Many people now are thinking that the law is not something which metes out justice as it should do. It is something which a lot of foreign criminals use to hide behind and weaponize in terms of their Article 8 rights, the right to a family life, often on absolute spurious, ludicrous reasons. We all remember the Albanian chicken nugget. And that, unless they get some serious reform of that, which they've promised, but so far the details are lacking, this problem is just going to run and run, because left-wing lawyers who are only too keen to represent foreign offenders, illegal migrant, to help them dodge their deportation claims is only going to grow, and the backlog of people in hotels is only going to grow. And it's something they need to grasp the nettle with.
Of course they need to grasp the nettle and understand that the British people should be first. It happens every week. I just understand less and less patently, because we have a government and we have an ideology, it seems, and we have a blob, and we have all sorts of people who think it's OK to put other people who have no goddamn right to even be here, it's OK to allow them to strip us bare whilst British people are really struggling. Yeah. Can you tell me about Farage today? I thought this was interesting. Nigel Farage unveils plans to charge non-DOMs. This is really interesting. A one-off £250,000 fee in exchange for tax breaks. What do we know about that in reform, Jack?
Yeah, so Nigel Farage today has been unveiling what some people have described as a Robin Hood tax, in which essentially he would allow multi-millionaires from overseas who currently have to pay quite a lot in non-DOM taxes to basically dodge those taxes. And instead what they would pay is a £250,000 lump sum, which would be put into a pot which could only be used to give essentially cash top-ups to the lowest paid in society. So he's identifying two problems here. He's saying that, one, the taxes which are put on to overseas residents in this country are so much now and so burdensome that many are just deciding not to come here at all. Lots have gone to other places in Europe, like Italy or Greece, for much cheaper rates. He's saying that is a bad thing because it means that the overall wealth of the UK goes down, and we need these people. But he's also saying that if they are going to come here, rather than just them coming here, making a contribution, and it goes to, I don't know, more money for the NHS or being swallowed up in public services, it would go directly to the poorest in society as a direct payment for them in their bank account. So it's an interesting idea. Many people are making the point that, okay, essentially what you're going to do is make the UK incredibly attractive, maybe too attractive, because then we're basically saying that we're not going to get as much tax from them as we otherwise would have done. But we do have a problem which he's identified in the fact that a lot of ultra-rich people who do bring a lot of money and entrepreneurship into this country are simply thinking, actually, the UK used to be a great haven for me. Now it's not so good because we have so much tax. And so maybe we'll go elsewhere. So he's trying to win those people back, but also it does seem a bit of a ruthless ploy to try and essentially buy voters at the bottom ends of the income ladder off with a bit of free money. And so there's an interesting idea. Whether or not it'll have been implemented, I think remains to be seen. The other opposition parties are picking holes in it, saying it will leave a massive black hole in the finances. But at the moment, we do need some kind of radical policy to be able to actually attract wealth and talent into this country, because there's been a massive exodus. And it's really interesting when this government came, well, not interesting, it's quite boring, but when they came to power, they were all about its growth. It's growth. I heard that phrase growth again and again and again. And actually, straight away, they made small and medium businesses struggle even more with higher national insurance rates and scared. You know, it's the old argument. To me, Labour's only got one argument, which is we're going to tax the rich. Now, that's fine, right? But the rich pay almost 50% in tax. What that doesn't tell you is that millionaires or people who have built a successful business employ people, and that creates money, and that drips down into the whole economy and benefits us all. But by those people running scared, I'm not saying the devil will be in the detail, to coin you. I haven't read too much of what Farage said, but there has to be a way of encouraging people who are successful to not leave this country simply because you are saying you're successful, we're going to screw you. It would be surely better to say, you know, you need to pay more, but how can we integrate you and make sure that you benefit? Just very quickly on that, the other big thing politically today, Angela Rayner's workers' bill, this is interesting from the Tories, is a wrecking ball for the UK economy. That's another thing that people are saying doesn't create or help growth. NI on one hand and workers' rights, but, oh, I'm sorry, I've got a headache, I'm off for 6 months, I need full pay. Ludicrous. Ludicrous. I mean, this is one of the things that businesses have been screaming about for the past few months. You know, not just national insurance rises, not just inheritance tax, capital gains, but also this package of employment rights bill, which essentially is a huge transfer of power away from businesses over to unions, who obviously help fund the Labour Party, and they have done for many years now. And it essentially wraps up bosses in a whole load of red tape, which could actually choke the life out of their industries and choke the life out of growth in this economy. And it's now the real big, I think, battleground between businesses and Labour, whose relationship before the election was quite good. And you remember Rachel Reeves and her prawn cocktail offensives, salmon breakfasts, really trying to get the business community on side. Well, a lot of them now are telling us, in fact, they're not just telling us privately, but they're telling the country publicly as well, is that they feel a bit missold because Labour positioned themselves as the party of business.
He said the wrong word. No, what's it, Sherlock? You're joking. Missold. I remember thinking at the time, I remember talking to you during the election, and when you're broadcasting, you know this, people might know this who are listening, there's a thing called Purdy, you can't be showing favouritism. I'm sat here every day thinking, he ain't telling anybody anything. So dire are the Tories, so much so have they stopped being listened to, that he could say nothing and get a majority election, and then it all comes home to roost. Listen, pal, working hard at that new job and doing a brilliant job as well. We really appreciate your time as ever, Jack. Political editor of The Sun, Jack Elsom. He'll be back very soon. He loves it as much as we love having him on. What is it, 18 minutes to 5? If you want to be on Talk Drive, 0344 499 1000. Mike's in East Grinstead. Jez. Starmer is nothing more than a coward, mate. His de-escalation speech is bowing to his Labour-supporting electorate. His speech should have said, I'd like to thank our closest ally for their swift, decisive force to dismantle the dangerous nuclear intentions of one of the most dangerously terrorist hostile states in the world. He, Starmer, is a complete disgrace. Rich says, Jez, look at how UK citizens are treated the north of Ireland when they protest. These Palestinian groups have been infiltrated and are proxies of foreign powers and need to be treated as such. Police and government are scared because it's all jumping on bandwagon outnumbered citizens. The UK couldn't arrest and deport all these people without the army, says Rich. I don't disagree, but it's dual standards. I am not condoning the far-right thugs after what happened up north. I'm not. Right? But there were plenty of people who aren't far right who felt so aggrieved and so hacked off by this government that they took to the streets. They were all labelled far right. Will you please explain to me why a couple of miles from this wonderful studio, Palestine Action, are even on the streets? Rather than I'm about to prescribe them, Yvette Cooper, you idiot. It was on Friday when they sabotaged 2 planes. Why would they not, over the weekend, round it up in their houses with the doors going in on television, like the rioters were after what happened up north, right? Why on earth were they not shown on television being rounded up, tried and in jail by this morning? Because it's dual bloody standards. 0344 499 1000. Talk Drive back in 3.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5:45. Good afternoon, Jez. With regards to the Bryce Norton incident, you're correct. It's an act of terrorism and countenance to treason, entering Crown MOD property illegally. I served 23 years in the RAF, Jez, and did many gate guard duties. The terrorists that entered the base on Friday illegally are incredibly lucky they weren't shot dead. In my day, we would have had the right to fire under those conditions. Committing or about to commit an act of terrorism. I don't know what's changed. Ban those Palestinian terrorists and put them away and throw away the key. They hate the United Kingdom and they goddamn live here. I'm scared. The world's changed. Thank you to Bob in Cheshire. Chris in Newbury, this is spot on. Lord Hermer is the Attorney General. This is the man who advises Keir Starmer. He's another human rights lefty, vegetable-eating weirdo. He's the one who thinks Lucy Connolly should, I don't know why I said that, should indeed languish in jail. Chris says, Lord Hermer has defended US enemy after US enemy. I was surprised the US won't tell Starmer anything. Hermer is a national security threat. And Lammy is a flipping joke to the phone line. Sue is in Kent. Good afternoon, Sue. You're on Talk Drive.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Jeremy. I was just phoning up because I think your caller's just mentioned it. One of the things I wanted to say was that we're hearing about the destructive act those guys created on that base, but I was wondering where the defence of the base was. Isn't there any guards anymore defending these places? And
well, I'm going to read you something. I mean, actually, I think this is Carl in Derbyshire says, I'd like to thank Palestine Action for actually illustrating how easy it is to bloody well break into our military bases. With these plebs riding in on push bikes, it could have been much, much worse. Just think what a few bad actors could have done with such lax security. I think that's an absolutely important point, don't you?
I think it's absolutely frightening, Jeremy. The other thing I wanted to say was these paedophiles, those two paedophiles that are still walking the street, are they on benefits?
Probably.
Because if they are, it's almost like we're rewarding them for the acts that they've committed. It's like they're just being allowed to get away with it and nobody seems to care. You know, it's disgusting.
This revolting Qari Abdul Rof, good God, piece of rubbish. He remains in the UK more than a decade after he was supposed to be deported. He destroyed his passport, claimed he had no home, and now he's reported, I mean, it's reported in the Sun today, brilliant, and the Mail as well. He reportedly holding wild parties in his own home, just doors away from terrified children and the families he once preyed upon. Neighbours say they're too scared to let their kids outside. They've been instructed by police not to confront him, despite their outrage because he might get upset. What the hell is wrong with this country? I mean, how bad's that? Are paedophiles having parties, probably on us, the taxpayer, having been put in jail for raping young white girls. Now he's out and he's having the time of his life, and no, the rest of us are struggling. It's absolutely ludicrous.
Tell you, Jeremy, I've begged my husband to let's leave this country. I have been in tears over the state of this country, and he doesn't want to leave. But if I had my way, I would. I'm ashamed and embarrassed.
Couldn't agree with you more, Sue in Kent. Thank you, my darling. We'll head to Merseyside really quickly. Larry, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
I concur with the lady who's just spoken, but those men are actually sentenced and should be sent to prison forthwith.
I couldn't agree more, but no, we're letting them out. We're giving them benefits to have parties.
How can we do that when somebody's sentenced with a severe offence like they are, and those poor families trying to live with those Pakistanis? Oh my goodness, I cannot bear to think that I used to be a magistrate and part of the judiciary. Well, the judiciary is weak and pathetic. Oh, I forgot. We were all taught by Keir Starmer.
Love you. A former magistrate who's that frustrated she says she couldn't do the job anymore. Honest to God. What does the station commander at Bryce Norton have to say, says Stephen Stoke? If there is anyone to fall on their sword, it's him. It's utterly bloody shameful. We can't defend a military base. We can't defend our borders. Breaking news, by the way, breaking news and talk. Qatar has shut its airspace temporarily. Just heard this after US and UK warnings. The Qataris have now temporarily shut it down. The ministry said it added the move has been done to ensure the safety of residents Visitors, this comes as Iran has just repeated earlier threats to retaliate against the United States after strikes on its nuclear facilities. 10 to 5, we're live across the United Kingdom. If you want to be on, get your call in 0344 499 1000. Back in 3.
Yeah, the waiting lists are crazy as usual. I think there's around 7 million patients waiting on the NHS at the moment, or around 6 million, but 7 million interactions that are needed. So some people have several things that need to be done. And we're being bombarded with these text messages and letters saying, do you still need your appointment? Do you really need it? And if you don't reply, then you're removed from the waiting list. So there's some inventive accounting going on to try and bring these waiting lists down, including using hospitals and clinics outside of the UK.
Well, this was the thing we discovered at the weekend. The number of people having procedures overseas has jumped by 42% in just 2 years.
Keir Starmer was actively undermining that strategy. Because Keir Starmer was wandering around saying, "Oh, you don't need to worry. Donald Trump doesn't mean it. It's just noise. It's just the hawks in Washington just beating the drum. It's not really going to happen." So at the same time that Keir Starmer was basically calling for de-escalation, his words had the practical effect of undermining that strategy. And you can't have the British Prime Minister conducting foreign policy in complete.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back afternoon to Tristan in Bedford. He could be called Tristan Bedford, I've no idea. I'm so glad we have Talk, Jez, but everything just seems two-tier and all the lefties have infiltrated our industries and institutions. It's all British last, foreigners first, and absolutely no common sense. It beggars belief. I'm getting more frustrated by the day. Barry says, Jez, airfield security on RAF bases has been laughable for decades, really complacent, totally unprofessional, exacerbated at Bryce Norton by a station commander whose speciality is administration. You couldn't make it up. Wendy coped. A general election now. It's not going to happen. Sue in Dorset, you're quite right. Lucy Connolly should be pardoned and awarded compensation, but she won't. I think this is interesting. Joe Hanlon in Shrewsbury. I think the way things are going, the UK will be segregated still further from our allies, like the USA, because we have allowed so many to take up residence within our country that we can no longer be trusted. If the Americans had invited thousands and thousands of people, Nazis into their countries in the 40s, would they still be an ally today? Interesting comment. A couple of voice notes. Pete's in Liverpool. Go.
Hi, Jez. Pete from Liverpool. I think it's time the monarchy needs to step in. Trump's done the right thing. The world's at risk, Iran having nuclear capability. And our government can't come out and say, we 100% stand by what the US have done. And can you imagine Trump now? Can you imagine, like, what he thinks of our government? Anyway, mate, it's a dodgy world, isn't it? Take care, bud. Ta-ra.
Bless him. The monarchy won't get involved. I'm against what you say. I don't disagree with anything. It's a constitutional monarchy. It will never damn well happen. Unfortunately, Chloe, on Iran, go.
Hi, Jeremy. It's Chloe in Hampshire. What concerns me about this Iran-Israel situation is that if we don't actively support the US in the defence of the West, when we need their help, are they going to step in for us? Because ultimately, we are only a tiny island with a tiny defence force.
Getting tinier by the minute. Couldn't agree more. If you want to get a voice note on WhatsApp, 0344 499 1000. We'll go to Nottingham. Beverly, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, that was posh.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Crack on then, love. Only 2 minutes.
Right. I mean, my main thing is that we should never, ever have had a Prime Minister who has been an HR lawyer, a human rights lawyer. Yeah. I mean, he can't get out of the mould. I think the problem with him is he's obviously been a lawyer for a long while, and he's only really worked in that field of human rights, which means he's only had a narrow area to think about. Personally, where Trump's concerned, Trump says it as it is and says what he's going to do.
And does it?
Okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. And what he thinks is, if he says something, and say it might be a bit controversial, he has got such top lawyers that can go through things like Billio. And if he does say something controversial, those lawyers are so much on the ball, like these top lawyers that Manchester City have at £10,000 an hour. They're not human rights lawyers. You know, you've got a corporate lawyer. They're very clever. They work in different fields. They're working with top businesses. They have to think instantly. They know where to go. But with Starmer, every time anything comes up, he only skirts round like, you know, oh, yes, we know that obviously we can't let somebody have bombs, you know. We do understand that we can't let them have those bombs. He won't make a decision.
No. And actually, can I jump in and say, and that actually is, I completely agree with you. I don't think there's a political animal inside him. I don't think he has the gut instinct to respond. And I think this country, I've said it almost every day on this show for weeks, I think this country is crying out for a conviction politician to be its leader, even if you would disagree on many things. If somebody stands in front of you, Beverly, and says, this is what I'm going to do, and come with me, I say it every week, on a journey, there'll be highs, there'll be lows, I'll take you through the whole goddamn thing. This is, vote for me and I will do it, come hell or high water. We don't have that. We have politicians like Starmer who bend to everybody, who are ideologically based, and who are, it's all about focus groups, not guts, is it? He hasn't got guts, he hasn't got an idea, I don't think.
But what it is, whenever he says anything or anything's put to him, you can see that his mind's ticking over. Yeah. Is this legal? Yeah. And you know that as soon as he gets out of that interview, he's going to check and see if it's legal. He doesn't look on the basis of, don't worry, we can get round this, we can do this, we
completely
can look at
agree.
This.
Beverly, don't think me rude, I have to finish you there, but I'm delighted that you called from sunny Nottingham. Appreciate it. It's almost 5 o'clock. Benidict Spence on the way with his view on everything that's going on. What is your view? Loads of you trying to get on. We will get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Same number for a WhatsApp voice note and text. Keep them coming. Loads already. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. It's almost 5. The news on Talk is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, hour 2 of Drive for Monday. We're live across the UK. Talk, of course, the home of free speech and common sense. Whatever you want to talk about, several ways to get hold of the show. 0344 499 1000 on your mobile or whatever way. I don't understand. You can do a WhatsApp thingamajig voice note on the same number. You can send a text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. So much to talk about. Is it going to be all-out war? Was Trump right to do what he did? Why didn't the West do more? Why is our government so spineless? What do you make of it all? Let's not forget these are mad ayatollahs who fund terrorist organisations who needed to be taken out. Down to Donald Trump. Is he stepping over the mark? I don't know. What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. Palestine Action. Sean Bell, brilliant an hour ago. Wasn't vandalism. It was sabotage. It was terrorist. It was actually destroying £35 million worth or making not available to our forces two aircraft at Bryce Norton. Yvette Cooper says, I'm going to prescribe them as a terrorist group. I would have done that on Friday and arrested them on Saturday and thrown them in jail on Sunday morning, because they did that with the far-right thugs, didn't they? That'll be interesting. Migration, just in case you're having a bad Monday and you're thinking, oh, my God, I work like a bat. Honestly, I've got no money. It's all a bit of a... Don't worry, because you can be rejected as an asylum seeker and still live in a hotel. So if you're really struggling to pay your mortgage or your bills, don't worry. Just go to Calais and get a dinghy. You come back in, you'll be fine. 0344 499 1000. The other story that's resonating with you today: Rochdale grooming gang leader Qari Abdul Rauf. This is the one who went to jail for being the ringleader of men raping young white girls. He was due to be deported in 2014 to Pakistan. He's still here. He destroyed his passport, claimed he had no state to go, and is living very near the people that he destroyed, whose lives he destroyed, holding wild parties in his house. Not working, presumably on benefits. Honestly, how does that sound about our country? What does that make you think? God alive. John Lawler, Starmer and the Labour Party are an embarrassment to this country. They get absolutely nothing right for us. What is the point of Keir Starmer, says Jane. Perhaps you or your audience could think of something he's done for the British people since the election. No, we can't. A very good afternoon to the legend. We have to say legend because he insists on it in his contract. It says here, to the legendary Conservative commentator from his pile, Benidict Spence. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. It's nice that you use legend, because I had, Supreme Ayatollah in there, and that had to be taken out for various reasons. So it's a happy compromise.
I get that. Where would you like to start? Would you like to talk let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East. I can give this to you in a very direct way. When after the second inauguration started attacking NATO, I, as a lone voice, was going, good for you. Why should America wipe the backside of Europe? And I hear today that Europe and NATO have decided, or we at NATO have decided, that actually, yes, we are going to make GDP at 5% for defence. God knows when, 25 probably. But it's there, and him leading the way and putting his foot down has worked. Was he right to carry out these attacks, bearing in mind the mad Ayatollahs have been funding terrorist groups for as long as any of us can remember?
I mean, the first thing to say is that once Israel launched its attack on Iran, it would have been politically very difficult for the United States not to have intervened on the side of the Israelis. And once the Israelis launched their attack, Iran was always going to start ramping up the process even more of developing nuclear weapons than it currently has. The Israelis decided to launch their attack because they believed Iran had reached a certain nuclear threshold. And so the question is very simple. Do you think Iran should have nuclear weapons? If the answer is yes, then Trump shouldn't have launched this attack. But if the answer is no, then I don't really see what the alternative was. The Iranian regime had made it very clear that they were going to continue enriching uranium. And for all, you will hear a lot of people equivocating and saying, but where was the real evidence that this was what they wanted? Look, you don't enrich uranium to 60%, and you don't do it in bunkers built deep under mountains if you're just doing it for civilian purposes. That's all you need to know. This is a regime that has pledged to destroy Israel. Israel was well within its right to do what it did. And yeah, as I say, it would be intellectually far more honest of all the people who are saying, but what about the international ramifications? What about this, that, and the other? It would be far more intellectually honest if people just went, yes, Iran has the right to nuclear weapons. That would be a much more straightforward way of dismissing this than a lot of people are. But if you don't believe they should have done, then he did the right thing.
Interesting, though, that he made a big thing during the campaign, during the election, before he was re-elected president, that he was good at putting fires out, so to speak, not disrespecting wars when I say that. I'm going to sort out Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours. That didn't happen. I don't get the feeling that he's glorifying or wanted to do this, but I get the feeling that it was something that he felt he had to do for the reasons that you probably outlined.
Yeah, these two conflicts, these are not really conventional conflicts in the truest sense. Russia-Ukraine is obviously a very difficult one because Russia is winning that war. That is why Donald Trump is not able to strong-arm the Russians into a settlement, because the Russians are perfectly happy with things as they currently are. When it comes to Iran and Israel, again, this isn't a conflict about land. These are two countries that are separated by 1,000 kilometers. This is an ideological war. This is a religious conflict. This is not something that actually you can do a deal around if one side is pathologically determined to eradicate the other. You actually can't reason with those people. You can't negotiate with them. And we need to be clear, this isn't everybody in the Iranian regime almost. This is people at the very top who live must be said, very out of touch with most other people in Iran. That's why there have been mass protests throughout that country for the last few years. That needs to be reinforced. But when you are dealing with a country like that, I'm sorry, it's so easy. Lots of people like to sit there and say, well, these wars, they don't solve anything, they just freeze things. You go back to the example of the Second World War. Nobody in any moral situation could sit and look at the Nazis and go, yeah, we should have done a peace deal with them. We shouldn't have fought them all the way to Berlin.
Well, Chamberlain did, to be fair, Chamberlain did try to do a peace deal with them. It just went wrong because he didn't realise what the bloke was up to. But no, I'm with you, and I, let's add into the.
It was a disgraceful betrayal.
Absolutely. Let's add into the equation the fact that not only have they declared war on Israel, but the impact that they've had on so many people's lives through backings of terrorist organisations, whether that's aimed towards Israel, but other countries have been dragged in. And everybody seems to think this is, I don't know, but lots of people writing and texting here saying that they agree with Trump and they wish that we had somebody with the cojones that size in the United Kingdom. But why does it always have to come down to the Americans? Could we not have been more vocal? Good old Starmer's just sat there in the middle, isn't he, going, we know to go back to the negotiation. How do you negotiate with bleeding terrorists then?
I mean, on the subject of Iran's sort of nefariousness about the regions, we can point to civil wars in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Iraq that have the fingerprints of that regime all over them. I mean, this is a country that is so extreme that it almost came to blows with the Taliban in the 90s. That is actually, that's the sort of regime that we're talking about. And that was before, of course, the Iran-Iraq war took off. This is not a nice regime. On the subject of why it is that it's always the United States that ends up sort of footing the bill on all of this, it's because they choose to actually prioritize not just military spending, which they do, but economic growth. You can't really spend very much on your military if your economy isn't growing, if you aren't creating the wealth to then spend on your weapons and on your soldiers, because these things are incredibly expensive to upkeep, to just sort of sit around doing nothing. And Europe has decided it doesn't really want to do that. Now, for half of Europe, that's because it is still mentally scarred by the Second World War, and in countries like Germany and Poland, the idea of sort of overt militarism is unacceptable. For countries like France, they have their own spheres of influence and they decide what they're going to do. And to be fair, France has had a lot of sort of military operations around the world at the same time. It's put a lot of money into trying to pacify the Sahel. In the UK, it's because we've just sort of decided that we aren't going to be a major power and we're just sort of going to sit around and hope that nothing bad happens.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to say, we will talk about other issues, other areas that we're a bit of a laughingstock, that we're wasting money, all this, that and the other. The MOD, because it isn't something that always gets talked about every single day, like the NHS, has been able to go under the radar as just a huge money hole, just sucking in all of these resources. And what have we got to show for it? Submarines that don't work, vessels that we can't possibly staff, and not enough soldiers. It's a disgrace.
I mean, I said last week that it's been an easy, I mean, to be fair, Sean Bell said this an hour and a bit ago. It's been an easy target, you know, whilst the Cold War allegedly has been going on. But the world has changed, and we need to wake up to that. I don't think it's right and proper that you said something there that's really interesting. We don't want to be a world power anymore, in your mind?
No, honestly, no. The best way I'd say to look at this is the absolute ferocity with which the political elites of this country cling to the idea of the European Union.
Yeah.
What they wanted was ultimately to be part of an empire, part of a club that they didn't have to lift a finger to actually make operate, but that they'd get to be part of this great big imperial project. They'd get to go to Oxford, go to Cambridge, become civil servants, maybe go off and work in Brussels, move into the private sector, have a very comfortable life in this supreme sort of edifice that has all the trappings of empire, but doesn't really require the hard work that empire needs. That is ultimately what Britain was. It wanted to be a cog, the slightly snootier cog, if you like, in somebody else's empire. In terms of being a great country itself, no, that requires hard work, that requires difficult decisions. Honestly, I think that is where Britain is. It doesn't want to do this.
Doesn't sound great, though, if you live in Britain. A couple of other things. Can we talk? I mean, honestly, there's so much of the... Can we talk about the Palestinian Action Group? I thought, again, Sean Belly, I don't know if you were listening, probably you were out shooting. The Grace season has started. He said, I want to take you up at talk on your description of the group behind the vandalisation of 2 planes at RAF Bryce Norton. This was on Friday. He says that is patently the wrong language. It is sabotage. Sabotage and even treason against the security of the United Kingdom. Paint was poured into these engines of these 2 aircrafts in Bryce Norton, rendering them useless for however long, £35 million worth of damage. The Palestinian Action Group were then, well, Yvette Cooper said, I'm going to prescribe them as a terrorist organisation. They're on the streets today outside Parliament, not being, ushered, not actually being rounded up, as the police did after the Southport riots, actually just being moved along, and that's all well and good. Again, too slow. I mean, this is an outrage. They should be dragged off the streets. Why not the same to them as happened to the other people? Oh, yes, two-tier policing.
I suspect that there will be an effort by this government to try to calm this situation, because they fear the backlash from a lot of people in this country who support the idea of Palestinian statehood, and they worry that if they prescribe this group, they will get it in the neck at the ballot box across the north of England in certain constituencies. They also, I suspect, think that Palestinian Action recognise, given the backlash that's happened, we might have actually gone too far this time, because I think there is an understanding from across this country, in almost any other country in the world, if you break into an airbase, you'll be shot.
Absolutely, dead. On the spot.
Yeah, there's no question about...
What does it say about the security, by the way? How crap's that?
This is why I think they have to come down hard on them, and why any attempt to sort of row back on this is a mistake. At the exact moment that Iran is saying, well, it's going to be hell to pay for everybody, Iran, which is the country that has almost as many operatives based in other countries as any other, the kings of this international grey zone warfare, who fund terrorists, who fund lone wolves all across the world, for this group to rock up and go, look how easy it is to get into an RAF base. I would have thought the government, a serious government, would be furious and would be coming down like a ton of bricks on these people, if nothing else, to demonstrate to that hostile country, actually, no, we do take our security very seriously. That isn't happening, though, as far as I can see.
Of course it isn't, and it's exactly what you said at the beginning, which is they're trying to placate the very voters that they don't want to lose in the north of England. There were 5 constituencies, Jonathan Ashworth in Leicester East, who lost to a independent candidate standing only on one thing, which was the Gaza debate, right? Not getting into that. I just find it, and it brings me on to the next subject, because I spent all last week ranting about this. If we're basing our justice, our Prime Minister is a human rights lawyer, we're basing our justice on not wanting to upset people and in completely ignoring the vibe of what people are thinking. We had it last week with the grooming, the rape gangs, and there's an awful bloody story this morning in The Sun. I just want your take on this. Rochdale grooming gang ringleader Qari Abdul Rauf, right? This is the one who in 2012 was convicted along with 8 others for raping and trafficking vulnerable white girls across northern England. He gets out, he's supposed to be deported to Pakistan. That was 10 years ago, but he destroyed his passport, said he was stateless, and The Sun reports that he's out there holding parties in streets not far from his victims and his victims' family. Benidict, I don't want to go over the top. We're a bloody laughing stock, man. He should be ripped off the streets and put on a plane and taken out of this country. What is wrong with us?
Yeah, not a single one of these people should be free to roam.
No.
Country, not a single one. And I'm sorry, if it's going to then be the case that some international court turns around and says this is a disgraceful, you just go tough. I'm sorry.
But hold on a second, it's got bugger all to do with you, international court. Why do we kowtow? This is a question. I know you're going to give me a detailed answer, but why is it we go against common sense and we kowtow to lawyers who cost us money to invoke or use ridiculous rules in foreign courts to get people who we know have broken the law off? Why don't we just round them up and deport them?
Same reason as I said, we wanted to be members, not we, but certain people in this country wanted to be members of the European Union. We want to be part of the large club that makes rules for you so you don't have to make the difficult decisions yourselves. That's the key thing about all of this, is this idea that very clever people who know better for everybody are creating a wonderful world in which everything works perfectly well and it's sort of decided for you from on high. And that gives a framework for certain people like that to work with. It means that they never have to actually do any hard work. Because
or make a decision. And that we were talking about that earlier about politics, you know, bringing him back in for a reason. Donald Trump, loving him or loathing him, says, I'm going to do this, and he does it, irrespective of the consequences. We don't have that here. You heard Starmer earlier, oh, you know, we're going to have a thing. He should absolutely know he should be in the face, verbally, I think, of Iran, but he doesn't do that, does he? He doesn't do that because he's concerned.
Well, there's also the reason that Starmer doesn't want to get in the face of Iran is because Britain's military has been so degraded that, if I'm being honest, I don't think we have any business getting involved physically in this war.
Imagine listening to that. Then why is it, if that's the case, this is what really does my nut, right? If that's the case, and I think we all believe everything you've just said, why are we so attractive as a country for people to come to then? Why? Why are we so attractive if we can't control our borders? We allow rapists and paedophiles to walk the streets. There's knife crime everywhere. People can't Why are we so attractive?
Well, there's half your reason, because if you break the law, you won't be deported. I mean, that's straight off the bat. If you're somebody who doesn't want to live in a high-trust society, if you're somebody who is a little bit shady by nature, or if you're somebody who's prepared to work for not very much money, if you're somebody who quite likes the idea of free healthcare and, you know, easy access to every service because other people are paying for it, that's ultimately why people want to come. They look at the sort of the slight, the breakdown of the dysfunctioning state, and they look at their own countries and they go, well, it's not too different, really. Actually, if anything, it's slightly better because people have already paid for the infrastructure to be built in the first place. I'd rather go there where I know I'm going to be taken care of because their silly laws say that they have to do this sort of thing. You know, these people, they don't think in terms of sort of, they don't think civilizationally. They don't think sort of 40, 50 years down the line, who is this going to impact? They think about themselves in the here and now. How is this going to benefit me? And of course, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, this is a system that absolutely benefits those people. And here we are, the suckers, going, well, we can't be beastly, we have to be nice. And this is what the international law says.
Why do we have to be nice? Because we're still apologising for the past, or because being English is being nice? England's skint, broke, can't afford its interest rates.
Again, though, the whole apologising for the past thing. I mean, if you're sort of a working class English person, or a Scot, or a Welsh person, or an Irish person, why is it actually that the activities of the British East India Company somehow mean that you are complicit and you have to pay through the nose today?
I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I don't understand is why we have politicians who cannot put the United Kingdom first. They put illegal migrants first, they put criminals first, they put foreign aid first, they put everything before. Oh, the father-in-law's on every afternoon, Rob. He gets more and more mad. It's a joke. Why weren't they shot for breaking into the Air Force Base? Completely with you, Rob. In any other foreign country, those perpetrators shot dead. It doesn't happen here because we haven't got any guns, we haven't got any soldiers, we haven't got any metal for the gates, the planes didn't work anyway. It's crap. It is true though, mate. Somebody said to me on Wednesday last week, we are in danger of becoming a laughingstock, Benidict Spence.
I think we already are, actually. I think most countries, I think it's slightly worse than that. I think a lot of countries simply don't care. I think a lot of other major powers look at us and they just go, who's listening to these people?
Really?
You know, for all Keir Starmer or David Lammy can come out and saying, there must be a ceasefire about this war and about that war and this must happen. Let's be clear here. Xi Jinping didn't even know who Keir Starmer was when he met him. That's ultimately what this is. This is a situation where you've got Vladimir Putin having a good old chuckle going, oh, what have they said I have to do this time? Donald Trump doesn't share information with the British government because they can't be trusted. The Israelis don't trust us. None of these countries take us particularly seriously. That's the situation we've got ourselves into.
That's it, I'm moving, I've had it, I'm going, I'm leaving, I can't do any more. What is the point of it? I'm not trying to be difficult, but, you know, all the people who care about this country are really deflated. And why can't a politician, or maybe Farage is, and I don't know, why can't politicians understand, in your mind, Benidict Spence, the depth of the frustration and the anger the British people are feeling right now?
I think, as I say, because incredibly hard work to change this. I mean, the way that the system is based now, you need, as much as anything, to understand that you'll be going up against an entire system that is arrayed to stop you from changing anything. And it's not just the legal system, it's the civil service, and that's at all levels, national and local level as well. That will require, a political party to win an election with a huge majority that actually wants to change that. So that's not the Labour Party, let's be very clear, or the Conservatives.
No.
And you need that vision, and you need the wherewithal, and you frankly need the courage to say to the public, look, it could get worse before it gets better, but here is our actual plan, rather than doing what Labour did, which is go, it will get worse before it gets better, but by the way, we're now going to be giving £10 billion to Mauritius, and we're not going to be stopping the boats, and we're not actually going to change.
Hold on a minute. Don't poo-poo Starmer's deal about the Chagos Islands. We did hear the announcement last week, and I hadn't spoken to you at the time, where because we gave them the Chagos Islands and £16 billion, not only have the Mauritian government cleared their national debt, but no Mauritian will pay income tax for 12 months. Try telling that to British... Honest to God. And I'm going to finish with a story that this is deliberately for the father-in-law. Pin back your lugholes, Rob. A simple nursery rhyme is making waves. Do you know this story, Benedict?
No.
Not for nostalgia, because a puppet production of Hickory Dickory Dock at Islington's Little Angel Theatre, there's a surprise, Islington, the capital of wokeness, is now carrying a trigger warning because when the cat chases the mouse, it could cause distress and anxiety to toddlers. So let me get this right about the Little Angel Theatre in Islington. Whilst the world sort of teeters in the Middle East, whilst our country is seeing thousands of migrants, whilst people are living homeless on the streets and pensioners are freezing to death, this stupid, ridiculous, I nearly said the wrong word, pathetic place is carrying a trigger warning over Hickory Dickory Dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock's at 2. It had a... I don't know the rest. And because apparently kids could look at this, little Iris, 18 months, and I'll read this to her tomorrow, the mouse could be the people and the cat. It's scary, and that could cause youngsters to be traumatised. Benidict Spence.
Well, all I can say is I hope she never has to watch a single Disney film because she will clearly be traumatized. Don't let her watch Bambi or any of those other ones. Don't let her ever read a German fairy tale, which, you know, let's be clear, there is not a good outcome in all of them, any of them at all. Honestly, in this country, the only thing that should have a trigger warning is the fact that none of our triggers actually do anything. That's basically the only one that I can think of. And from that, all this absolute nonsense, a load of rubbish. But we're still going along with it, aren't we?
Have you got a cat there? Have you got a cat there?
Well, that one.
You've got a cat over your left shoulder. The mouse killer. Is it a real... It is. He's got... You horrible man. We should have done a trigger warning. If anybody's watching on YouTube and you feel traumatised by Benidict Spence's cat in the background, if you're what a load of old... Honestly, I can't be doing with it. But you're a legend. Well, you're pretty nice. You look like... I want you to be sitting there stroking the cat, a bit like Blofeld in the Bond movies. You're a legend. Thank you for ringing, mate. Coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. 5:25. Benidict Spence talking all things, including that story that Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock, is traumatising. This is what Islington Council of the theatre, Little Angel Theatre in Islington, think this is traumatising to young kids to see a poor little mouse being chased by a big pussy. 5:26.
you can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one
time. Tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people, then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
And
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Yeah, the waiting lists are...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello to Craig Brown. Jez Benidict Spence quite rightly said that Britain was hoping to be part of a European empire of strength. Well, unfortunately, to be an empire, you need to have an emperor in charge, or to be a kingdom, you need to have a king in charge. We're a country, and we have an idiot in charge. Quite right, Craig in Sunderland. Lynn, Benidict Spence hit the nail on the head, as he always does. Our politicians like being paid to sit on their asses on the fence that's part of the club and to be able to blame the club when it goes wrong. The Conservatives did exactly the same for 14 years. Neil says, Jez, when Palestine Action gets banned, I think we are able to seize their assets. Given that, I suspect there is foreign sponsorship behind this group, when then their funds might be considerable. Let's take this money and use it to repair the RAF Voyagers that they damaged to the tune of £35 million. Paul Hart says, just catching up on that news about the attack on RAF Bryce Norton, I'm aghast that perpetrators have not been slapped in jail and the key lost. Another example of two-tier care. We'll head to the phones to Leeds. Steve, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Jeremy. How are you?
Not bad. Not bad, me old son. What can I do for you?
Just a quick one on Sir Keir Starmer. I remember during the riots, he's not been mentioned much, but he came on stage in front of all the cameras and said, this government is going to protect the Muslim community from far-right people. So what I want to know is he going to do the same, come on stage and say, this government will protect the Jewish community, and I'm not Jewish, I'm a Catholic, from any anti-Semitic attacks that occur as a result of what America's done in Iran? Because if I was Jewish in this country, Jeremy, I would be absolutely terrified at the moment. And where's Sadiq Khan saying the Metropolitan Police are on high alert for anti-Semitic acts carried out in London? Because I guarantee if it was the other way around, we'd have them all outside the mosques and all outside the schools to make sure they were safe.
I have to say, if I'd put that call on 5 years ago, the world would have gone, oh, that's outrageous. You are absolutely spot on. I have lots of Jewish friends myself. I've been very vocal. I was on air on October the 7th when those appalling attacks happened. I do not like, before the do-gooders jump up and down, I do not like what I see in Gaza. But I think that Hamas, that disgusting terrorist organisation, oh, by the way, funded by the mad mullahs of Iran, like Hezbollah and Houthis. I'm going to keep saying that. I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things about anti-Semitism that does my head in, people might, they'll have their own opinions, right? I think any form of racism is abhorrent. But there is an absolute imbalance when it comes to anti-Semitism. I don't know that's where the Jewish communities are successful or because they're I don't know what it is, but you are absolutely right. I say this a lot on the show, Stevie. I've got friends whose kids can't wear their blazers in London for fear of reprisals. I don't like any of that. I think you're absolutely spot on. And I made the point earlier, I supported him when he came out. There were far-right thugs on the streets, but not everybody. But he labelled anybody that disagreed with that policy as far-right. This was, by the way, a government that didn't tell us the truth about who that criminal was, Rudy Buchanan. They could have literally said, it's not an illegal migrant. That went across social media. It's not a choir boy. Here are the facts. But they let it build and build. There's a part of me, and a lot of people think this is a conspiracy theory, that felt that they let it build so they could slap down on the far right. Why the hell aren't they slapping down on Palestine? Palestine Action in Trafalgar Square right now are grappling with the police, and the police are going, oh, don't be naughty. Why are we not seeing pictures, as we did with far right, being dragged off the street, tried and jailed within 24 hours? Two-tier, mate. Always two-tier, right?
The thing is, Jeremy, just quickly, right, Sir Keir Starmer and Lord Harmer reckon they're international human rights lawyers. Have they ever made a statement about the human rights of those poor people that are held hostage in those dungeons in Gaza? Because they've got human rights. They might be Jewish, they might not be Muslim, but if you're a human rights lawyer, it's about human rights. So when Sir Keir Starmer stands up and says, I'm a human rights lawyer, but you're not, are you? You're selectively a human rights lawyer.
Completely agree with you, mate.
The wrong people.
Completely agree. And I was also on air when Boris Johnson got the biggest kickback, I think, from almost everybody when he dared to say, before you lecture me on how I made mistakes during Partygate, you were indeed the Director of Public Prosecutions when Jimmy Savile was let off. And I remember Starmer being affronted and saying, I was in charge of a big company and I, big organisation, and I can't possibly be over everything. But you expect the Prime Minister to be. I'm completely with you. Great call, mate. Really appreciate it. Hello to Betty. If we broke into one of the RAF bases and damaged Starmer's plane to protest their destruction of country as, say, the... What? Oh, I can't understand that. Jeremy, I think Donald Trump is an absolute legend for what he's done at the week. When it comes to England for his royal visit with the King, I hope everyone turns up and shows their appreciation to him, and then Keir Starmer can see what it's like to be appreciated. Right, next guest. So much going on. A man who knows the US inside out, Deputy US Editor. Oh, we've been promoted, have we? Freddie Gray, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Lovely to see you. I'm Deputy and US Editor. It's complicated. It's confusing.
So deputy to the Gove man who spends the afternoons wearing gowns and drinking claret. So you're doing all the hard work, if we're honest, to Michael Gove's. It's Michael Gove, lovely man, but it's just ceremonial, that title, really, isn't it? But US Editor, where shall we start? Oh, yes. Trump warns allies, what says to his allies, bully Iran, make peace or we'll be back. What did you make, genuinely? So many people have an opinion. Certainly on this station, there seems to be a sort of belief that it needed to be done and that this man was the only man with the balls to do it. What's your view?
Well, I think we ran a very good piece a long time ago called The Rest of the World Plays Chess, Donald Trump Plays Poker. And I think he is playing poker at the moment. And at the risk of paraphrasing Iranian propaganda, which is not something I want to do, this is a gamble. This is a very big gamble. It may be a very audacious and brilliant gamble.
Yep.
But he is very much saying don't hit back. And the rest of the international community are warning Iran not to hit back because the rest of the world is very concerned about what Iran will do next. And Donald Trump, as a brilliant man put it to me last week, that there are three Donald Trumps in Donald Trump's mind. There's the winner, the deal maker, and the peacemaker. And I think he thinks with this strike, he may just be able to get away with being all three in the end.
Is there a loser in that? Could he lose out on this?
Well, he hasn't really lost so far, so you should bet against him. But I do think this action could have repercussions that could spin out of control very, very quickly.
But it is also fair to say that against the agreement they signed many moons ago, the Iranians have gone far deeper into creating the uranium need underground to make nuclear weapons, and that threat is very real. And for the people who go, oh, this is outrageous, this is, and I've said it 104 times already and boring myself, this is a disgusting terrorist regime who have funded terrorist organisations to murder people in the Middle East, and their absolute vow is to destroy Israel.
Well, you're completely right. The question is, has striking Iran over the weekend removed Iran's desire to acquire a nuclear weapon? No, it probably hasn't. It may have delayed it considerably. We don't quite yet know yet. But the problem with the whole conversation about Iran is that even opposition groups, the so-called moderates that we think may take over in Iran, they would want Iran to have a nuclear bomb. We're going to struggle to find a government in Iran that is able to lead and does not want its own nuclear weapon and is not pathologically opposed to Israel. So it's a very, very difficult situation. I think that Trump obviously wrong-footed people last week with his, it won't happen, I'll make a decision within 2 weeks just before doing the strike, which is very Trumpian. But I do think the people in the administration are worried. There's a lot of people who run the MAGA movement who are worried, people like Steve Bannon, who feel that this is not what Americans who voted for Donald Trump wanted. They're probably happy with a one-and-done strike.
Yeah.
But if Iran retaliates, which it's very likely to do, how likely is it to be a one-and-done strike?
Well, yeah, let us destroy what you've got, but if you do it again, I mean, that's his difficulty. You're dead right. If you retaliate, we'll come back again. I think you're right. He'll get away with one. It'll be really interesting. Can we bring it, let's bring it to Starmer. I mean, honestly, he must have splinters in his backside. You laugh and I laugh, but he really is. If you try and be all things to all people as much as this guy does, you end up hacking everybody off, don't you?
Well, yes, I think Starmer fancies himself as a leader on the world stage.
Really?
I think what you're seeing at the moment is Britain irrelevant.
Yes. Yes.
We have David Lammy making noises.
Is that after he's eaten all the food?
Quite. But nobody really thinks that Britain is an important player. I think where things might get interesting is the US-UK trade deal.
Yeah.
Starmer, if this situation gets worse, which it may well do, Starmer's going to come under a lot of pressure from the left side of his party to distance himself from America and maybe even condemn America. If he moves in that direction, he'll find that the US-UK trade deal, which is gone, which is his only real half achievement on the international stage so far. So I think the situation in Iran could have negative consequences for the one thing that Keir Starmer and Peter Mandelson, to give him some credit, have achieved, which is to get America to agree with us because, as Donald Trump says, he likes us.
I can't have Mandelson either. Let's bring it home if we can. There's so much to talk about. Palestine Action. It's quite interesting. Sean Bell said about an hour and a half ago, Jez, it's not vandalism, it's sabotage. Sabotage. And that should, I mean, if you've broken into a military base in other countries, you'd be shot on the spot, right? It says nothing about the defence of our military bases. £35 million, 2 Voyager planes, part of a very small defence unit that now supports us. And yet there's 500 of them in Trafalgar Square wearing black face coverings and waving Palestinian flags. 3 have been arrested, but the police are going sort of move along, whereas all these far-right thugs, anybody who took to the streets after the Southport killings, the police rounded them up. They were tried on television and thrown in jail within 24 hours. This is absolutely double standards. Yvette Cooper comes out and says, I'm going to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist group. Why didn't you do it on Friday night? This is the sort of stuff that really gets people, Freddie, about this government, because it does come across as two-tier on so many issues.
Well, it absolutely is two-tier, and there's a reason why two-tier has stuck. It's because it's true.
Yeah.
And as your last caller put it, if it was any other group, they would be locked up, rounded up, but, police action would be far more dramatic. And they just refuse to do it. And it's because of very misguided ideas about injustice in the Middle East, about the way that the Palestinians have been treated and so on. But that does not mean that you get to behave in this way in public on the streets of London and other British cities. And yet we always cave because Labour are very nervous about the Muslim vote. They're very nervous about Gaza independence doing well. That's a real problem for them, and it's going to be a bigger problem in the future.
It's frightening, isn't it? A lot of people phoning this show and this station the whole time saying it's just frightening, and we wonder where it ends up. Just a couple of other very quick things. If you get, I've just found out this today, it didn't surprise me at all, you can actually be denied asylum in this country and still live in a hotel rent-free for ages and ages, because we just don't know what to do with you. That's costing millions. The story that really got me today, which I'm sure the Spectator will have a view on, the Rochdale grooming gang leader Qari Abdul Rauf, who was jailed for leading a gang of British Pakistani men who raped young girls, went to prison, somehow got out. He was be deported to Pakistan. That was 10 years ago, but he threw away his passport and said he's stateless. He's in the same street, or just down the street, from victims' families, and he's holding parties. The Sun, brilliant article today. Honestly, it does. I do sit here sometimes and I want to swear. We're pathetic. This man should be deported out of this country with those horrible paedophiles in a heartbeat. Somebody has to have the balls to say that, don't they?
Well, Jeremy, you're not worried about inflaming community tensions?
Sorry?
You're not worried about inflaming community tension?
I'll tell you exactly what I'd say. It's this. There isn't a racist bone in my body, but here's what happens. If you're going to come to my country, OK, because you're going to tell me that your country is awful, don't come to my country and destroy everything that we have and implement stuff that you say don't work. Follow the rules, speak English, and if you think that's acceptable, you can go somewhere else, because it isn't in a civilised society. But what chance has anybody with sense got? Because bloody Hugh Edwards is walking the streets with a BBC pension and he's a paedophile. You laugh, but it's true. Why are we soft on the worst types of people? And I'm sure the Spectator are with me on this. And Lucy Connolly languishes in jail for nearly 3 years. Does it make any sense?
Well, because, I mean, to go back to my facetious question, we've always had this overriding concern. Our compassion is always with the wrong people. It's often with the perpetrators. And that is a big, big problem with the British government. It's a big problem with a lot of our institutions, that we're so worried about community tension and sort of side issues like that we don't actually deal with the primary problem.
Are we concerned with community tension, or are we concerned with communities who have come from somewhere else's tension and not actually the tension that's causing the communities in the United Kingdom?
We're concerned with, with the Labour Party is very much concerned with community tension that might backfire on them politically.
Don't think me rude. I need to just break some news very quickly. There are reports of a series of explosions over Doha, the capital of Qatar. Freddie, I'm going to have to leave it there if that's all right with you, my friend. Really appreciate your involvement. The excellent Freddie Gray, deputy editor of The Spectator and US editor as well. We're back in 3 with that news.
Across the UK, DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 5:45. That breaking news. There have been, it says, a series of explosions in the last few minutes over Doha, which is the capital of Qatar. According to a Western diplomat cited by Reuters news agency, there have been a credible effect against the Al Udeid air base in Qatar since midday. In addition, the Wall Street Journal, our sister paper, is reporting that Iran has positioned missile launches for a potential attack on US forces. The closure of Qatari airspace is significant. We told you about that earlier, coming with hours of the UK and the US warning its citizens to take shelter. This all comes after the US carried out airstrikes, as we know. So breaking news in the last few minutes. Reports of a series of explosions over Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unconfirmed reports in our sister paper, the Wall Street Journal, that Iran has positioned missile launchers for a potential attack on US forces. Are they going to respond? Where does that leave Donald Trump? Where does it leave the world? Have we got him lined up at all, Joe? Are we ready? All right, we're gonna get some news on that. Got a couple of voice notes. Lots of you sending those. We're just gonna get as much detail as we can on Qatar. Let's do a couple of voice notes. Billy in Hampshire on Palestine, that protest group. Go.
Hi, Jeremy. Billy from Hampshire. With all this chaos going outside in London, with all these Palestinian and Iranian protests, why don't the DWP minister that's now cutting benefits for all the hard-working taxpayers and our pensioners have a look at these so-called protesters that clearly don't have anything to do on a Monday, go to a job and cut their benefits? And while they're at it, book them a flight to a country where they're protesting they really clearly want to support and see how they do in Iran or Gaza.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Susan, Southampton, go.
Hi, Jez. This is Sue from Southampton. When I see that stupid parliament, Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer, and Lammy, and I just think of them all in a little room. And do you know the advert with Haribo sweets? And they're adults that are eating them, and they all sit around their little conference table in using little child voices. I think of them eating their Haribo sweets, trying to run a country that they have no idea what they're doing. They have absolutely not a clue. They are the most useless, rubbish government I've ever known, ever in my life. There is not one thing they do for us, for the British people. We are done. Bye.
Great. Simon, on Iran and Starmer, go.
Hi, Jazz. The reason Starmer won't make a decision, the reason he's sitting on the fence with so many things with regards to Trump's bombing of Iran, is because he's waiting for the lawyers. He's waiting for what the lawyers have to say about it, and he's waiting to see if there was actually nuclear material in those areas that were bombed. But he's waiting for the lawyers because he is a lawyer. OK, he didn't make any decisions. We know that already. It's run by lawyers. The country's run by lawyers. We need to get him out, get the lawyers out as well. Have a good day. Cheers, buddy.
Thanks for your voice notes. We have breaking news on Talk, a report of explosions over Doha, the capital of Qatar. This is according to a Western diplomat. Apparently there's been a credible threat against the Al Udeid air base in Qatar since midday, and a report of the Wall Street Journal, our sister station paper, reports that Iran has apparently positioned missile launchers in readiness for a potential attack on US forces. The closure of Qatari airspace confirmed earlier. This, of course, after the US attack on those Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. It's 10 to 6. We're live across the UK. We'll bring you more after this break.
Really going to happen. So at the same time that Starmer was basically calling for de-escalation, his words had the practical effect of undermining that, undermining that strategy. And you can't have the British Prime Minister conducting foreign policy in complete ignorance.
You can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
And
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7 minutes to 6. We're live across the UK. That breaking news reports, according to a Western diplomat cited by the Reuters news agency in the last few minutes, has been a credible threat against the US Al Udeid air base in Qatar since midday. In addition, the Wall Street Journal reporting that Iran has positioned missile launchers for a potential attack on US forces. This, of course, in consequence, it could be said for what happened at the weekend. We're delighted very quickly to be joined by Sir Gerald Howarth, former Conservative Defence Minister. Sir Gerald's not there at the moment, so we're having a nightmare here, but we will definitely get there. I will repeat that. He's just joining us, bless his heart. The closure earlier, you'd have heard of Qatari airspace. He's ready now. It's all last minute. That's fair enough. Sir Gerald, thank you for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
Hi, Jeremy. Well, we're preparing for our village open gardens on Sunday, which is the biggest event in Chelsworth in Suffolk. We were the first village in the country to open a number of gardens simultaneously, and so we'll have about 20 gardens open on Sunday.
Well, that's
so
all good. I have to drag you away
busy.
from that, my friend. I'm sorry, but this is breaking news. Now, you will know, you're a former defence minister, what happened at the weekend. We have just heard that, according to a Western diplomat, cited by Reuters, the news agency, the Al Udeid US air base in Qatar, there's been a threat against it, and allegedly, according to the Wall Street Journal, reports that Iran has positioned missile launchers ready for a potential attack. What's your response to that, Sir Gerald?
Well, to a certain extent, Jeremy, this was predictable given the assault on Iran's nuclear facilities over the last week or so. Al Udeid is a very important US base in Qatar. I've been there myself. It is the base from which many of the operations in Afghanistan were run, and it's therefore a vital place for the Allies. But I'm afraid to say that this was going to happen sooner or later, because Iran is not just a threat to the region, which it is, but it's a threat to the rest of us. I mean, they have been funding terrorist groups against Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, for decades. And nobody is prepared to trust the mullahs who run Iran, very civilized people, except for these mullahs. And I think that it was inevitable at some point that either Israel or the United States would seek to prevent them from developing a nuclear capability.
We haven't got a lot of time. You haven't either. But was Donald Trump right to launch those attacks in your mind, Sir Gerald?
Yes, I think he was, because once this had been started, albeit by Israel, I suspect with the nod of approval from the White House, I think it is important that it has to be seen through. I mean, when I was in the Ministry of Defense, I was, of course, briefed on the situation in Iran. And I remember at the time wondering why on earth we had signed the joint cooperation agreement signed by a previous government, and from which Donald Trump withdrew his first term of office. What we also need to think about in this country is that Iran has been providing weapons to Russia so that Russia can seek to destroy Ukraine. And if Ukraine is destroyed and Putin succeeds in Ukraine, who knows where else he will go? Therefore, Iran has been extremely helpful to a real imminent threat to the United Kingdom.
And also in defence of Israel, many detractors, and I understand that for reasons that we don't need to go into because we haven't got time, they've made it their life's aim to end that country and its population. Very quickly, reassuring words needed from you. There will be people listening to this who think, geez, what is next? What do you think is next, briefly?
Well, I suspect I don't know how to what extent Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed in these attacks over the last 10 days or so. We'll have to wait and see what the intelligence reports, so far as they are made public, reveal. But certainly, I think that you're absolutely right, Jeremy, that Iran's policy has been to drive Israel into the Mediterranean from the river to the sea. And the events of the 7th, the appalling atrocity on the 7th of October 2 years ago has brought this whole matter to a head. And as I say, don't forget, these mad mullahs have been a real threat to the Gulf states. They have been funding and arming these terrorist groups around the Middle East. And sooner or later, somebody had to hold them to account. And I do say, finally, Jeremy, I do say this, the Persians are a sophisticated people. And I just find it extraordinary that such intelligent, sophisticated people have been prepared to put up with the people who are running that country at the moment. And perhaps one of the results of this action by Israel and the United States will be to bring about a serious change in the running of Iran.
Sir Gerald Howarth, we so appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. All last minute, Sir Gerald Howarth, former Defence Minister, reacting to that news we broke. Basically, there is news in Qatar of a threat to a US airbase. Apparently, missile launchers have been positioned to attack US troops. We'll give you more on the news and more. I'm going to get Sean Bell back off his sunbed to give you an update after the news at 6, which is next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back, Talk Drive, live across the UK, at the home of free speech and common sense. You might have heard that breaking news in the news, before the news as well. According to a Western diplomat cited by the Reuters news agency, there have been credible threats against the US Al Udeid airbase in Qatar since midday. In addition, the Wall Street Journal reporting that Iran has positioned missile launchers for a potential attack on US forces. This broke about half an hour ago. At the beginning of the show, we spoke to Sean Bell, celebrated military analyst, a man who was a former fighter pilot. He talked about what had happened at the weekend, and he talked about what might happen next. We're delighted to drag him back off the sunbed. Sean, thanks for joining us again, my friend. What do you make of this latest breaking news?
Yeah, I mean, it's like all these things when it's breaking, you've got to pick up the scraps from where you find. As you say, there's been reports that 6 missiles have been fired. There's explosions heard over Qatar. Now, it is worth remembering that Al Udeid Air Base is one of the biggest air bases in the region. I have spent some time there myself, well over 100 military aircraft normally based there. And importantly, it's also the Combined Air Operations Centre there, which the US runs on behalf of the coalition. It's relatively isolated location, and if you were to choose a target that is relatively near to Iran, essentially this is one of them. The worry, of course, is that I believe there's something like 11,000 US and international personnel based there. My understanding was that before all of this US operation, a lot of the US assets, aircraft based in the region, were basically flown away just to limit the potential for them to be struck. But of course, there's always a worry for people on the ground. And we say at the moment, we haven't anything confirmed, but that's the worry if this is where it's heading.
We were talking with Freddie Gray earlier about, you know, what happens. It would be, Trump has said, you know, it's one and that's it, you don't respond. It would seem likely to most people that the Iranians are or were likely to respond. If this is true, and I brought you back because, you know, but there's a lot of people going, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Difficult times, isn't it, really, for people when they listen to this news and watch it?
There is. I think what's always interesting is trying to see there's a bit of safe face with some of these things, and you have to read the body language, listen to the language and everything. After those strikes, you know, Iran did say, oh, they haven't actually hit anything. So it felt like they were almost trying to dismiss it. I think the key will be here if any US personnel die on the ground. I know it sounds horribly blunt, but that will force President Trump into having to up the ante and stakes. It may well be that, you know, after all, Iran's missile capability has been severely degraded over the last few days, both by firing missiles at Israel, but also Israel's been targeting launchers and their defense industrial base. So it may well be, let's just see how this plays out. It may well be the defenses in place are sufficient. It may well be that this is simply Iraq saying, look, we're fighting back.
Tokenism in a way. It sounds, as you said, a bit harsh when we're talking about bombs and stuff like that, but got to show their people that they're doing something without, apparently, I'm just suggesting it, without going too far, so to stir America into further action. Is that what we're sort of saying around the houses?
Well, it's also worth remembering sometimes with these sorts of things, Jeremy, that it's as much about messaging for your internal population it is for external. They've called this an enunciation of victory. That's what I understand that the Iranians have called this. So for a domestic audience, it may well be that they're saying, look, we're striking at the heart of American military capability in the region. Whether or not it actually has any dramatic effect, in a way you hope that it doesn't end up killing anybody. It allows President Trump just to go, OK, that was the response. I think the really difficult thing is if, of course, it does end up with casualties, particularly significant casualties, because, frankly, President Trump never wanted to get involved in a long, drawn-out conflict, but this would tie his hands. He would be obliged to escalate if that was the case.
So just as far as we know at this point, moments ago in Qatar, with the reports of 6 missiles, that's what we've got so far, right, Sean?
6 missiles we understand. We also understand Al Udeid was the target. We've also understand the airspace is being closed down around Qatar,
Yeah.
one of the busiest airports in the region. Apparently they're all dispersing elsewhere. There was a credible threat. It was, I think, announced in the Wall Street Journal earlier on today, but we're never quite sure where this information actually comes from. But you know, in individual bits of it, you doubt, but there's quite a collection of it. And of course, if there have been explosions, traditionally that would be air defense missiles going up to meet incoming missiles. And as I say, we'll need to get more information. But we were expecting the potential for something from Iran. This would be a pretty significant escalation from Iran's perspective because they're attacking another Arab country. But if it is isolated to the air base, unfortunately, we have Royal Air Force personnel normally based there, so there are Brits there as well. I don't know if there's any Brit aircraft there. I'd be surprised if there are at the moment. But as I said, this is all breaking news at the moment.
Really appreciate your time. Really, really appreciate it. Just brilliant to have you on. Sean Bell, military analyst. So to break that news again, Iran fires 6 missiles. These are unconfirmed reports at a US airbase, Al Udeid, in Qatar. Is this in response to the Trump bombing? Is it tokenism? I think Sean Bell's absolutely on the money. They're probably trying to create the notion domestically that they've responded. He's right, though. President Trump will find himself in no man's land, genuinely. If any American personnel are injured or killed, he will have no option. There are many, many people sitting here, listening, watching and thinking, what the hell next? Your thoughts, very important. 0344 499 1000. Text to 8722. It's breaking news and talk. We're going to Bolton. Mark, good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Drive Time.
Hey, Jez.
How are you? You've heard that breaking news about Qatar, right?
I did, yes.
What do you make of it all?
I'm not sure what to make of it, to be honest. Like you just said, I think it could be the regime trying to show the people that they are fighting back, kind of thing. Whether it is that or not, yeah, I don't. I think it's too early yet.
Was it right of Donald Trump to launch this attack at the weekend against this nuclear facility? And sorry, my postscript's very simple. These mad mullahs have been funding terrorism, mass murdering for years.
Yes, I do believe it was right. And another thing I find is bad for us, really, is that it looks like from someone who's not in politics or broadcasting media, whatever, that the Netanyahu and President Trump don't seem to have invited the UK to the party.
Of course they haven't invited the UK to the party. This is going to sound terrible and people won't like it. If you're watching pictures, this is about explosions have been seen in Doha. We're keeping you updated. This is in Qatar. Reuters news agency and our own Wall Street Journal reporting that there have been 6 missiles launched at the US Al Udeid air base. Mark, I'd only say this, and Benidict Spence said it to me earlier. Apparently Starmer found out just minutes before the attack. I don't think we're a major player on the world stage at the moment for all sorts of reasons, because we have a government that's more interested in ideology. We've got no army, no air force, and we haven't got the diplomacy anymore. I genuinely think that. Appreciate your call, mate. Thank you so much indeed. We're going to shoot actually to our international editor, Talks international editor, as we repeat that breaking news that Iran has just fired 6 missiles at a US airbase, Al Udeid, inside Qatar. Is this in response? Presumably it is to what Trump did at the weekend. Is it tokenism? Will it cause casualties? What will the fallout that be? Isabel, good afternoon. How are you?
Well, the truth is, a little bit nervous sitting here in probably, I'd like to think, the safest part of this region. I'm in the United Arab Emirates, but across the region, the governments are monitoring very, very closely what has just happened in Qatar. A number of countries are looking at potentially closing airspace, and it is all a bit edgy. I'm not going to lie. I think that the question now is, was anybody hurt at that US airbase in Qatar? Because if so, then that will likely escalate matters. But the US had plenty of advance intelligence that this was coming. That is why a few hours ago the message went out, and it included a message from our own Foreign Office that those in the country should, I can't quite remember what the phrase was.
Get the hell out.
Stay in shelter or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's an uneasy feeling. And I flew back into the Emirates on Saturday night, just as it happened, as America was unleashing hell on Iran's nuclear facilities. And my flight took a very, very wide berth of Iranian airspace. And there's a lot of people here in the Emirates tonight wondering, are they going to get out early? A lot of people leave the Emirates for the summer in any case. Are airlines going to be cancelling more flights? I reported last week for Talk that already the Dutch airline KLM was cancelling planned routes as early as a few days ago.
Just from a personal point of view, and you're there in the Middle East, was he right, Donald Trump, to do what he did? I've sort of said all day that I absolutely support what he did, and it annoys me that in the rhetoric of it all, people need to keep being reminded that these mad, I nearly called them the B word, but we'll call them mullahs, have been financing disgusting terrorist groups for as long as anybody could remember. And let's also not forget that Iran signed an agreement, a nuclear weapons agreement, that they've completely and utterly breached. They've made it their life's work to destroy the Israeli state from the river to the sea. They've said that. We, of course, are so weak and ineffectual and have absolutely no standing anymore on the world stage. Starmer found out about 5 minutes before it happened. And again, to me, it seems whatever one makes of Donald Trump as the man, and there are plenty of flaws, he's done what he probably had to do, and he's had the cojones to go ahead and stand up and be counted.
Well, this is entirely in keeping with the Trump philosophy of peace through strength. And evidently, the US had intelligence that Iran was absolutely on the brink of doing what Donald Trump and everyone else who's got any sense has always said must never happen, and that is developing nuclear weapons. And so, yes, I don't have any difficulty, unlike members of our government, members of the UK government, in saying I do support what Trump has done here. Does it make for a particularly comfortable, easy time across the Middle East? Of course not. But it is in the interests of everybody who wants a better quality of life, including the vast majority of Iranian people, for this regime to be weakened, if not entirely replaced. I mean, life for most ordinary Iranians is not good. You know, this is not some kind of nice place to live. And the naivety of those idiots that took to the streets in London protesting about leaving Iran alone. Are you kidding? I mean, do you think Iran is leaving neighbouring countries alone? I mean, Iran, sponsors of Hezbollah and so many other...
Houthis, Hamas, the list goes on and on. They want to destroy the Jewish state, for God's sake. What my point is, it seems to always come to America. I know we have only got about 74 soldiers. Let's talk about what happened. We're watching those pictures in Doha. We'll keep breaking that news, repeating that news. Iran has fired 6 missiles at the US Al-Udeid Air Base inside Qatar in retaliation for what Trump did at the weekend. Qatari airspace is closed. We're just going to keep updates. I think Isabel's dead right. This is the point, Isabel. If any American personnel are injured or killed, the game changes. Then Donald Trump's in a slightly difficult position because he made the point, didn't he? One strike, if you respond, there'll be trouble. I don't think he wants them to respond, but the reality was they probably always are going to, wasn't it?
Well, there's always face saving, and it's not just in regimes like that. I mean, you know, in almost all administrations, they want to do something.
We got some breaking news. You'll love this. Qatar has just said no casualties from the attack on the US airbase. Qatar has said that it reserves the right to respond directly and in accordance with international law. It's also said no casualties. Its air defences intercepted a missile attack We are assured that Qatari air fences thwarted the attack and successfully intercepted the Iranian missiles. A statement clarifying the circumstances of this attack will be issued later by the Qatari Ministry of Defence. So let me put this scenario to you. The Ayatollah Khomeini severely weakened the nuclear facility. We don't know how successful those bombs were because one of them at Kokana was 80 feet below. Did those bombs, what are they called, duster bombs or something, did they work? We're not too sure. Is this tokenism so that they can say to the Iranian people, look, we attacked an airbase, and Trump can go, well, that was pathetic, no casualties, let's all get on with our lives?
Well, here's hoping that's what it is. You know, it's obviously very hard to judge. You know, these people are not known as mad mullahs for nothing. There's an unpredictability about this. But I mean, Trump himself doesn't want a kind of regional escalation. And whilst you've just read out a statement there from the Qataris saying they reserve the right to respond, I'd be very surprised if they hit back at Iran. I mean, Qatar and Iran have good and close relations and economic ties, and an attack on an American airbase is effectively an attack on actually a sort of little pocket of US territory. It's a bit like attacking an embassy. So I don't think Qatar is going to have to strike back. They will want to talk tough to make it clear that you don't just get to pelt things across at their own territory without some kind of at least some kind of verbal comeback. But I can't see that they're going to follow through by trying to kick off a fight with the Iranians.
Are you all right to hang around a bit, because I want to go to break?
Yeah.
I want to talk to you afterwards about the other thing, but can I just repeat that news if you're just arriving back? There were reports earlier which are now confirmed that Iran fired 6 missiles at a US airbase, Al Udeid, inside Qatar. This was reported first by Reuters and then followed up by our sister paper, the Wall Street Journal. They closed Qatari airspace, which is, of course, quite significant. In the last few minutes, the Qatari Ministry of Defence has said that no casualties. And it's also said they reserve the right to respond directly and in accordance with international law. But as it stands, at that US Al Udeid airbase, no casualties. 6:20. You would talk drive.
and letters saying, do you still need your appointment? Do you really need it? If you don't reply, then you're removed from the waiting list. So there's some inventive accounting going on to try and bring these waiting lists down, including using hospitals and clinics outside of the UK.
Well, this was the thing we discovered at the weekend. The number of people having procedures overseas has jumped by 42% in just 2 years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Of course, that breaking news, Iran launching 6 missiles at a US airbase in Qatar, the UL-dead one. We have just had this from the Qatari Ministry of Defence. It reserves the right, they say, to respond directly in accordance with international law. But, they say, we are assured that Qatari air defences thwarted the attack and successfully intercepted the Iranian missiles. The Ministry of Defence added, thanks to God, the vigilance of our armed forces and the precautionary measures taken, the incident did not result in any deaths or injuries. The country's airspace and territory are safe. Back to Isabel Oakeshott. I get what you're saying there in the Middle East. I think a lot of people, I think that the difficulty in broadcasting when these things are on, and I remember 9/11 being dragged in and I did 11 straight hours, and you just have to be honest about it. And I think a lot of people you can talk to say, met a guy yesterday who said, I really worry about the future of this world for my children, but you have to crack on, don't you? There's no doubt there is a difference between right and wrong, and somewhere along the line, people like the mad mullahs had to be dealt with. I think that's a perfectly justifiable comment, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've literally chosen to bring my children to live in the Middle East, in the heart of this troubled region. And of course, you know, I worry about all sorts of things here. But I think it's still fairly clear who the good and bad guys are, if I can reduce it to that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the good guys are definitely not the Ayatollahs of Iran. And I think we need to be grateful that the Israelis have led the way on this. You know, Israel has had such an absolute, you know, kind of public relations beating for the last however long it's been. And yet here they are basically leading the way with the Americans on doing the entire Middle East, hopefully, a pretty big favour in weakening this regime. You know, their actions have already massively weakened both Hamas and Hezbollah, and things are changing. And this is profound stuff.
I have to say, thank you, Stavros. The airbase in Qatar is pronounced Al Udeid. Just to give you some bit of information about Al Udeid, it's the US CENTCOM's HQ, and British military personnel also serve there on rotation. What's been interesting, and Sean Bell made this point, this has been confirmed, many planes have been moved in recent weeks. Satellite imagery shows it comes after Iran's armed forces threatened to respond. So maybe, I mean, I go back to what I said before the break. Of course it's a powder keg and nobody knows what's going to happen. Donald Trump said, if you respond, you're in trouble. There are parts of the MAGDA movement, the Republican Party and American, some of the public who think that he was wrong to do what he did. There's many people across the world who will say, thank you, you were right. There will always be people against that sort of thing. I think the best that we can hope for with this is that the Iranian Ayatollah mullahs can say, we've responded, we've hit that base, and the Americans can say, really, there was no injuries, no casualties, let's sit down. But in all of this, we've got pathetic Keir Starmer standing there going, let's all sit round the negotiating table. I was brought up to believe that you don't negotiate with terrorists, but I could be wide of the mark. I wanted to ask you about the other big news story today, because this is guaranteed to send you through the roof, although you're in the Middle East. On Friday, and I was put absolutely straight by Sean Bell on this. The group, the Palestine Action group, broke into Bryce Norton and poured paint into the engines of 2 RAF Voyager planes. They only got 14. We'd called it vandalism all day on Talk, understandably. Sean came on and said, no, it's sabotage, and sabotage is terrorism, and these people should have been rounded up. Mind you, while you're on the Middle East, 500 of them are in Trafalgar Square, and the police are going, please move along. The far-right people, who I don't condone, and actually people who weren't far-right, were herded, arrested, tried and thrown in jail within 5 minutes. It's absolutely dual standards and appalling. Your thoughts, Isabel Oakeshott?
Well, my thoughts is that anyone who breaks into a UK military base and RAF Bryce Norton actually live really near Bryce Norton when I'm at home in the Cotswolds. Anyone who does that is committing a very serious offence.
Yes,
I mean,
you get shot in another country, you would get shot. You would.
Exactly that. You don't get to break into military bases. It's hard to think of any country outside the lily-livered West that wouldn't shoot on sight to a bunch of clowns breaking into a military base. Who knows what they might be planning? And as for the damage that they will have done those aircraft, I mean, the cost of repairing that will be absolutely astronomical. I mean, I haven't seen any expert sort of technical analysis of what's involved in clearing up the mess. But I mean, for me, this is very definitely custodial sentence territory, and quite significant custodial sentences at that.
Just very quickly, this is an interesting question. You're our international editor. Don't scowl at me. Talk. Does this missile attack count as a strike against NATO?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, you could argue, excuse me, that it is on the basis that I outlined before, that US bases are effectively like bits of US territory. I don't think on the basis of one mercifully thwarted attack, the US is going to go calling Article 5, which is the bit of the NATO agreement in which an attack on one is an attack on all. I mean, Article 5, there have not been that many occasions on which it's used, and it's notoriously difficult to get everybody to agree. So I don't think that's going to be happening now. I think it would have to be something altogether bigger, more dramatic, and much more causing fatalities for us to be in any way in the territory of talking about Article 5.
OK, so just for people tuning in right now, 6:30, we reported about an hour ago that Iran had fired 6 missiles at the US Al Udeid air base in the Middle East in Qatar. In the last few minutes, Qatar had said, and I quote, Qatari air defences thwarted the attack and successfully intercepted the Iranian missiles. Thanks to God, the vigilance of the armed forces and the precautionary measures taken, the incident did not result in any deaths or any injuries. The country's airspace and territory are safe, the ministry said. Back to the Palestine, we've got a call. I don't want you to go anywhere. This is for people, again, who are just tuning in. On Friday, God, we're soft in this country, aren't we? Some protesters from the Palestine Action group broke into RAF Bryce Norton, poured paint into the engines of 2 Voyager aircraft, £35 million worth of damage. And there's 500 of them, despite the fact the Home Secretary said, I'm going to prescribe them as a terrorist organisation. Do it on Saturday, you stupid woman. I'm going to do it in the future. Again, just playing to the crowd. They're in Trafalgar Square being, all jumping up and down. The police aren't doing anything. Let's go to West Wales. Richard, you're on Talk Drive. Isabel Oakeshott is with me.
Hello, Jeremy. Yes, well, to start to reflect what Isabel said, I agree totally that you should be looking at custodial, quite a long custodial sentence, because if you consider it, if, let's say they weren't just sort of local thugs or morons, but they were actually representatives of a foreign power, that would actually be considered act of war.
Absolutely.
And I forgive Talk for using the word vandalism, because that was started by Keir Stumbler. But yes, I do worry, though, that, as you've just said, what are the police going to do about it? You can prescribe the organisations.
It is interesting, isn't it, Isabel? If you look at those pictures there, and you, Richard, as well, I mean, every time I bring up what happened after the Stockport riots, I'm not condoning the far right. I hate the far right, right? But there were plenty of people on the streets who were trying to protest about many things that they think are appalling about this government, and they were all labelled by our Prime Minister as far right in a heartbeat. And we were at a point where there were no police, no jail time, and there was no jail space, if you remember. The trials were waiting 6 months. In the space of 24 hours, he rounded them up, his militia, put him on trial and put him in jail. Why the hell can't he do that, Isabel Oakeshott, with the Palestinian group? Oh, I know, because he'll fear he's going to upset certain people. Forget the British people, though.
Well, he can and he should under existing law. And I'm just looking at those images, and for those who can't see them, a curious number of these protesters are masking their features. They're wearing those ridiculous blue COVID masks, which never performed any health function. Some of them are wearing headscarves and caps and dark glasses and masks. Ask yourself why these people who are supposedly on a public protest, which is something, a right that we all enjoy in the UK, to actually take to the streets and make our feelings known on something. Ask yourself why they feel the need to hide who they are, because that's not the kind of public protest that I believe that we have the right to in our country. If you're going to go on a public protest, let it be public, show your face. Otherwise, we want to know what it is you're hiding from.
Quite right. Thank you so much indeed, Richard. More breaking news. Latest, Isabel, reports are coming through. Here's what I don't understand about war. That Iran gave advance notice of its plans to launch a missile attack against US bases in the Middle East. 3 Iranian officials said they needed to demonstrate that they would respond to America's strikes on its nuclear facilities, but that it wanted to give both sides an exit ramp. If Iran has given the US and its Gulf allies prior warnings, it might be an opportunity to de-escalate the crisis and might, in fact, Isabel, prove what Sean Bell intimated sometimes, which is in war and in moments like that, domestically you have to show that you're doing something, but actually you don't want to escalate it, you're box ticking, which is presumably what Donald Trump was hoping for.
Well, absolutely. Now, we don't know, though, how much further this goes. As you said earlier, I mean, maybe that's it. I sense that the mood here is that something else is going to happen. Bahrain must be feeling pretty nervous. There's a big US base there, and there may be some very advanced signalled strikes on those bases too. But the happy and best scenario is that there's a few more symbolic lobbing of missiles which don't actually hurt anybody because everyone's been told about it plenty in advance, and then this whole thing simmers down. That's a best case scenario, and I'm actually pretty optimistic about that. But nobody, truthfully, honestly, nobody actually knows.
And there's the point, isn't it? Netanyahu, I always felt the minute he started doing what he did in Iran, with very good measure, in my mind, after the threats made to his country, I sort of felt like the Americans were going to have to play ball, join in, stand shoulder to shoulder, not initially. But it just to repeat that, if you're just tuning in, reports are telling us that Iran gave advance notice of its plans to launch that missile attack, and 3 officials said they needed to demonstrate that they were responding to American airstrikes. But the fact there were no casualties, the fact there were no deaths, there were no personnel on the ground, it's a big airbase, ULD, is actually really, really important. So going forward, it'll be really interesting. That was breaking news. Can we just go back, if we can, I hope you don't mind, to this prescribed terror group? Why would no, I said the wrong word then. Why would that woman who's the Home Secretary say, I'm going to prescribe them as a terrorist group? Why doesn't she just get on with it? They are a terrorist group. Why doesn't she just get on with it?
Well, you could ask that about so many other things the government should be doing. I mean, this government loves signalling that they are going to do something, and then we all can judge by the results that just don't happen. I mean, there's many other organisations that we should be prescribing. What about the Muslim Brotherhood, which is very frowned upon, bluntly, in parts of the Middle East as being too extreme and unhelpful? Places like the UAE are shocked that we don't prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood. So this government doesn't have, and neither the Conservative government before it, by the way, a great record of taking a tough line. There's nothing clever or hashtag be kind about accommodating dangerous, threatening, divisive groups such as this. It's actually a weakness, not strength.
If you're all right, can we take one more call? Is that all right? We're going to go to the West Midlands. Robert, Isabel Oakeshott's with me. You've got a couple of minutes on Drive. What you got?
Hello, Jess. Can you hear me okay, mate?
Absolutely brilliant. Isabel can, all the way from the Middle East. Go.
Oh, welcome, Isabel. Yeah, Jess, my problem with this, right, is national security. Now that Trump has done that to Iran, right, they are known to fund terrorism, aren't they? Right. What do we let in? Every weekend for the last 5 years, illegal immigrants, right? It only takes 1% of all those illegal immigrants in every town, every village and every city where they've put them. Yeah, it's a turn against this country. Look what happened in Breeze Norton, is it?
Breeze Norton, yeah. Yeah.
That was 2 people. What happens if they call a war on our country and they've got them terrorists in every city, village and town?
And for all the people, I would say this.
Listen, James, please. We've got no one to protect us.
Well, I want to say this, and I want to say it to Isabel and also to you, Robert, but this is genuine. Last week when that news broke and Yvette Cooper stood up about the rape gang thing, and I lost my head for 3 days because I can't believe that we've got a country that allows that to happen. She stood up and she said in the Commons, and everybody went, what? Not only were these British Pakistani men and Muslims, right, but a large proportion of those paedophiles were illegal migrants. And Robert is absolutely right. It highlights 1,000,000%, doesn't it, Isabel Oakeshott? We are letting anybody and everybody into our country. We're wiping their backsides and we have not one clue who they are.
Well, here's the irony. We're especially welcoming of any Iranian that comes over in a boat and says, I don't much like the Iranian regime. And we basically don't go much beyond that in our questioning. And I've actually studied the guidance to the people that do the interviews of asylum seekers and what they do and don't get told to ask. And if you say that you're from Iran and you are a political dissident, then it's come on in. And I'm not sure in fact, I'm sure that is not interrogated particularly thoroughly. And here, we know the results of this because only in the last few weeks, a number of Iranian nationals were arrested in connection with very, very serious terror charges and allegations. And they may well plead that they are innocent on that, but that is what has happened. And the numbers are very substantial. Last year, 8,000 Iranians claimed asylum in the UK. That is an awful lot of people, amongst whom you would only need a tiny percentage to be on the side of the mad mullahs to present a very big threat to our country.
Completely agree, Robert. Thank you very much indeed. So just to wrap this up with Isabel, reports that Iran gave advance notice of its plans to launch a missile attack against the US bases in the Middle East. We hear now that 3 Iranian officials said they needed to demonstrate that they would respond to America's strikes on its nuclear facilities. We reported that earlier, 6 missiles, no casualties. Just a really, really interesting message from Rich before you go, Isabel. Surely, with their intelligence, the US will have watched them put launchers in position and shoot and could probably have taken them out at any time. Is it weird to suggest that the US let Iran save some face so it achieves long-term peace?
I don't think that's weird at all. You know, the early skirmishes of war are often theatrics, and it may be that theatrics actually are what saves an escalation.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much indeed. We'll keep in touch with you throughout the week. Just a fantastic lady to be on, as she always does. Isabel Oakeshott talks international. Everton, what is it, 18 minutes to 7 o'clock. We'll get some calls on. We've got John Lucas from The Sun about tomorrow's paper, 0344 499 1000. Back in 3.
is talk.
Back 17 minutes to 7 if you want to get your call on 0344 499 1000. Clive in Solihull says the missiles fired at the US airbase in Doha is very concerning. If it was Iran, they've just attacked America and will probably regret it. I think it's time the Iranian government was changed, but that's a can of worms. Scary times. Clive, you might have missed the news. Reports coming out that Iran did in fact give advance notice of its plans. This could be posturing, it could be war, it could be optics and all that sort of stuff. Apparently they wanted to give both sides an exit ramp. If that's the case, it might be America has done what America's done, Iran's done something in retaliation, no casualties, no deaths. Let's sort this hell out. But you understand people running around going, this is a really, really difficult time. Anna's in Surrey on the phones. Quickly. No, it's not Anna. It's a voice note from Anna. Well done indeed, Jez. Go.
Hi Jez, Anna, sorry, just listening to Chloe's Hampshire's idea that all of this is because Starmer's a human rights lawyer. Sorry, I do not agree. He may be a human rights lawyer, but he can still see that he is actively working against the human rights of his own people. You know, he is constructing a country that persecutes its own citizens. He's a lawyer, he knows this. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Anna. Breaking news. Reuters is now reporting that the main remaining US air base in northeastern Syria has now been mobilised for possible attack, citing a Syrian security source. The base, known as Kazrak, one of two bases in the area, is now on full alert. So Reuters reporting the main remaining US base in northeast Syria has now been mobilised for possible attacks. Kazrak, one of two bases in the area, is on full alert. Let's go and do the Sun thing if we can with John Lucas. Is that what we're going to do? Are we ready for that? Oh, you want me to do that? OK, it's all going on here. Craig's in Sunderland. Let's take him on the phone quickly. Craig, good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Talk Drive. More breaking news there.
Hi, Jeremy. Three basic things, two serious, one light-hearted. Firstly, David Lammy needs to get his finger out of his backside and start helping all the British citizens in all the affected areas.
I would never stick up for David Lammy, but a plane left with 63 people earlier, but there are certainly more people to evacuate. You make a very salient point, sir.
Secondly, I think we should declare this is a lot of things as treason and bring back capital punishment for treason.
Oh God!
For these people.
I've only got 14 minutes left. You're talking about the break. You're talking about the attack on Bryce Norton on those two Voyager planes by Palestine Action Group on Friday. Yeah.
And on a lighter note, with all these mad mothers, I think we should have a UK ban on buying their rice.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That's just an extraordinary end to that phone call. Here's an interesting one. Starmer's position on Israel is odd. He has sanctioned two Jewish politicians. He's basically said he doesn't approve of America's attack on Iran, yet his wife is Jewish and both his children are being brought up as Jewish. Bet there's some interesting discussions around the breakfast table in that house. That's an interesting one. John Lucas, who is the night editor of the excellent Sun newspaper, will be here next to tell you about tomorrow's paper, but just to repeat the latest news. So throughout the programme, we firstly heard that 6 missiles had been fired at the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar. They closed their airspace. Everybody held their breath. Sometime later, we heard from the Ministry of Defence in Qatar that there were no casualties. No casualties. We don't know the extent of the damages yet. They then sort of calmed down. We've just reported, rather via Reuters news agency, that the main remaining US airbase in northeast Syria has now been mobilised for possible attack, citing a Syrian security source. The base, known as Kazrak, is on full alert. We'll keep you updated throughout the evening here on Talk.
Yes, I believe in Israel's right to exist and right to protect itself. I don't consider Zionist to be an insult, by the way. I think it's something one should be very proud of, although not something one has to be to not be anti-Semitic. I'm not bought and paid for. I have never given a view in public or in private that has ever been anything other than my personally held view.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back to Drive. So if you've been following it, that breaking news we talked about, and Iran has just confirmed that it did indeed target the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar. It fired 6 missiles following the blatant military aggression, it says, of the criminal regime of the United States of America. In a statement shared by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Tehran said it will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty and national security unanswered under any circumstances. However, we did tell you earlier on that they gave notice. That was really important before the missile attack. This could be politics. This could be just what happens in war. You did that. We're going to have to show our people we retaliate. But the breaking news in the last 5 minutes, Kev will take you through the evening on this. Reuters reporting that the main remaining US base in northeast Syria has now been mobilised for possible attacks. It's Kazrak, one of 2 bases in the area. A Syrian security source telling us that is on full alert. We'll keep you updated throughout the evening here on the home of common sense and free speech talk. But we're delighted now to say a very good evening to the Newsnight editor of The Sun, John Lucas, who yesterday was responsible for my favourite story ever in the history of the world. Hickory Dickory Dock has a trigger warning because, you know, the cat that chased the mouse could upset kids.
Absolutely. Very, very scary stuff there.
Lots going on in the world. Tell us what's in the paper tomorrow. I don't think we haven't got the usual amount of time, but taking us for a ride.
Yes, well, we're launching our big investigation into activities at migrant hotels. So for about a month, we've been there looking at the amount of Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat delivery drivers who are staying in migrant hotels and working illegally for these delivery companies. So what we found is some of them are making up to £1,000 a week doing this when they should be, you know, they're not allowed to work. No. Basically, that's the bottom line.
No.
Why this matters?
All cash in hand, then.
It's cash in hand, but why this matters is, look, you know, lots of us take a little bit of extra work on the side when we're in dire straits. Well, many of our listeners might do, or who knows. Anyway,
but wash later.
But the crucial thing about this is that we are essentially, the taxpayers are essentially subsidising the business, these huge businesses, because these guys don't have to pay any. You know, they're not paying room or board, so we're paying for their workers.
We're paying for free living whilst they go and earn cash.
Absolutely. And
it's almost as good as giving $16 billion to the Mauritian government with the Chagos. So you announced they've paid off their national debt and nobody has to pay income tax.
Absolutely.
What does it say to the British people, all
exactly,
this?
And the other aspect of it is these guys are being able to use this money to pay back their fare crossings and also to send money back to other friends and family members who can then come over and do the same thing. So it's a sort of circle of life.
This is online, okay, online tonight and in the Sun newspaper tomorrow. This is a fantastic investigation. And you know what it always says to me as well? People say we go on and on about this. What does it say to people who are just struggling to make ends meet and pay the bills when they see stories like this? You know, you've got into our country illegally. We've put you up, got your doctor, got your dentist, taught you Pilates, given you flying lessons, and you're working on the hoof for £1,000 a week, and you're better off than we are, and nobody's paying any tax, and you're having your arse wiped. It's ridiculous.
And it's going on at all these hotels, and these hotels are supposed to be being monitored and administered by the Home Office.
Oh, but
you know, so they
well,
obviously
that's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, you know, there's huge questions here. I think if you pick up the Sun tomorrow, you're going to see all the details of this story. It's very, very detailed.
And I'm not just saying this is exactly where my newspaper always has been. That's where they do the best job. This is exactly dealing with what the British people want to know about, because there is a massive feeling of injustice. If you bring it up, people go, what are you advocating? I'm not advocating anything, but I'll tell you this, the British people are fed up to the back teeth. That is brilliant. We've been talking about the Iranian situation. Obviously, the newspaper will follow that. We'll follow it here on Talk throughout the evening. News now of potentially a US base in North Syria, Qazrak, being now on full alert. That's an ongoing situation.
Yeah, well, what is it? Is this all a bit of theatre?
Yeah.
We know, we think the Iranians may have warned America about this.
America probably could have watched them launch them,
I mean,
you know.
exactly. They emptied this base out. They did a similar thing in 2020 when the US killed their top militia leader, Soleimani. And it was a bit of theatre, so they can say, look, we've attacked you.
Well, they've actually come out and said that, haven't they, just now? In a statement shared by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Tehran said it will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty and national security unanswered under any circumstances.
Yeah.
But we could be wrong. We don't know what's going to happen.
It's very, very risky business, because you have one US casualty, and America are going to be obliged to strike back very, very hard.
Which I don't think Trump wants, and that's where the gamble was. This is absolutely brilliant. Cameron could do with this. Not. I definitely could. A pill to make you buff is a step nearer to reality.
Yeah. So we've had fat jabs.
I could definitely not do with that.
We're going to get a fat pill, but this is
fat pill?
Yeah, so those fat jabs would be a fat pill, but this is even better.
Right.
So this is going to make you buff.
ATR 258.
Yeah, that's it. So that's going to burn off the fat, but save the muscle, because at the moment, what these fat jabs do is they stop you wanting to eat. So
because it actually shrinks everything, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, I don't know about everything. Yeah, but
yeah, thank you. So a buff pill, I could end up with like a six-pack. No.
Yeah, exactly. So this works to get your muscles burning off the fat rather than.
Do you know what she just said in my ear, Jodie? What? Not after them custard cream biscuits. I haven't eaten all day, love. Don't start on me. Brilliant. And tell me this before Kev comes in. This is brilliant. In the Sun tomorrow. Just buy the bloody newspaper. It's the best. Mega Nugget. What's that?
Mega Nugget. This is unbelievable. So we see lots of weird and wacky, huge food in the Sun. Never had this before.
Never.
Lady's gone to buy her kids a pack of 20 nuggets. Don't know if I can say the chain, but from a local fast food restaurant.
McDonald's.
McDonald's, there you go.
McDonald's.
They're McNuggets. Yeah. And she's opened the box and there's a nugget in there.
Yeah.
At least 4 times the size of a normal nugget. Biggest, yeah.
Do you think it'd be grown or something?
It was so massive she could share it out with the kids. Look.
It was like in a scallop.
No one else is doing this type of journalism. We love it. We've done the longest chip. We've done the biggest hula hoop.
I'm so sorry about this. Kev's just come in and gone out again. Nobody knows what's going on. No, don't worry about it, Kev. He's left his mic.
I don't think he
Did you notice I was like, he just came in, sat down, and couldn't find it. He's gone again. No, you are the best. I love all that, right? So a mega, like in a scallop. It's like a bloody scallop.
Monster snacks, and our readers love it. And you guarantee every time you do a story like this, the next day someone comes on and says, aha, I've got a bigger nugget, I've got a bigger chip, or
somebody's got a bigger nugget.
And we love it, and we love getting the readers engaged with this sort of stuff.
So taking us for a ride, the Sun's investigation into how migrants are raking in nearly £1,000 a week by turning taxpayer-funded hotels into hubs for black market, Wild West marketplace work. More on that Iranian situation. A pill that can make you buff, Kevin O'Sullivan, a mega nugget that will make you fat. John Lucas, don't get away, you're a legend. Online tonight. Buy the Sun newspaper tomorrow, Kev. It's all about the breaking news. Latest thing from Reuters is a Syrian security source saying that a US base in northeast Syria known as Qazrak is now on full alert.
And they already attacked a base in Qatar, right?
Yes, Al Udeid. They fired 6 missiles, but Iran has confirmed that it did it. There's no casualties. Is it